Dang, and I was just enjoying the music. Hello, everybody. Good evening. I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. Aaron, thank you for sending me that text message. It definitely almost tried to light up my day. But yes, here we are. Before we know it, it's Sunday evening, and it is our time for our regular now. I feel like after this is the sixth one, so I think after the fifth or sixth in a row, we can finally say we're on a regular schedule. So thank you, everybody, for coming on. I definitely am enjoying it. Let's see who we have in here. Mr. Bullets for Bucks. And actually, if you want to come on, I'll send you the invite so we can continue our conversation that we've been having about the importance and the creator, the gun tuber economy. Ryan, thank you for joining, buddy. Now, what's the T minus 3 days and then 4 days of filming? What are we missing? James, thank you, sir, as always, for coming on the live stream. I absolutely appreciate it. I do feel bad. We didn't really have time to get together when I was in Texas. But next time we'll probably try to make a trip where it's going to be a little bit more. But with 3 young kids and the wife and the mini farm here, it's a little bit difficult just to get away for like that many days, especially going into SHOT Show season. Let's get this started. Grand Fog, I think you are welcome. I think this is the first time I'm seeing you on a live stream, so definitely do appreciate it. Okay, let me actually send the invite. So it's the same one. I'm going to put it in our Discord and join in about like 15 minutes or so, or if you just want to pop on and I'll bring you on in a little bit. All right. Okay, so there is our stream. Mr. Bullets for Bucks, it is in our Discord server. And Aaron, actually, if you want to pop on a little bit later on as well, we can definitely do that. I'll have to grab my microphone and all of that stuff. So, awesome. Fantastic. Enjoy. I know hunting season, it's like a whole different season for you guys. And like in full disclosure, I don't hunt. I know it's something that I do want to try. And like you guys basically just go off grid, go away, and like there's nothing more important to you for like that week or two when you can actually do it. It almost feels like a little bit different though. So one thing I will mention about hunting is like I always hear the stories of friends like, oh, I couldn't find any deer or this or that. I wake up every single morning and there's like 5 or 6 in my backyard or on my front steps or in our driveway. I think right now I almost hit one coming back. So I'm like, I don't know, maybe we'll just live out in the boonies, but there's like deer. It's like you have to try hard to avoid not hitting a deer. So yeah. Now I'm going to guess one guess as to what caliber you use. You use 7 PRC or 6.5 PRC. So that'll be fun. All right, so the topics we had for this one, I was going to go a little bit lighter on today's topics, unless Mr. Bullets for Bucks is going to join us, and then we're going to open up a whole big can of worms. And so what I wanted to really focus on is answering a couple of the questions. So still haven't gotten my money back for the CZ600. Apparently they mailed out a check, so we'll see exactly when that gets here. But one of the so there's really 2 aspects with this. So the CZ600 in particular. Number one is one of the comments that absolutely stood out was, well, how can you mention that CZ is not a well-known of brand, because here in Europe, they're known for their value and they're pretty much a common staple hold. Well, the answer is, number one, it's Europe. It's not the United States. In Europe, CZ has been a well-known name. The CZ 550 lines, I mean, all of those have been a staple with safari hunters or anybody who still needs a controlled round feed action. And if you want a nice Mauser action, well, the CZ 550 was going to be the way to go. In the United States, CZ is primarily more or less like a cult brand between the 457, the 22 guys, the rimfire guys, and then I would say a lot of it is really known for their handguns. So before getting into longer range shooting, kind of like the focus that the channel has been on over the last year or two. I actually heavily competed in USPSA until I hurt my wrist, tendonitis. Actually, surprisingly, I just got diagnosed with tendonitis once again. But the tendonitis was one of the big reasons why I stopped shooting as much handguns as I did. But in the handgun world, if you go to a nationals level match, you're going to have 50 to 55% of the competitors that are going to be using CZ handguns, CZ 75 and 75 clones. And then all the way down to at your local matches, it's probably going to be about 20 to 25%, depending on the region where you are. However, outside of the match or the niche circles, CZ is lucky to break, let's say, call it 1.5% market share. So largely speaking, no one really has ever heard of the brand. And that is why, let's put it this way, if Remington or Savage or Ruger, if they mess something up, they're just basically going to say, mea culpa, our fault. Or let's say, for example, like SIG. SIG, most people don't realize SIG hasn't yet launched a product in the last 5 or 6 years that hasn't had a recall or a major issue. Almost essentially when it no longer SIG Germany and it became SIG United States, with the new ownership, it's almost like SIG beta test their guns on people. But they still have a cult-like following. They still have massive market share. They have the predominant market share in the concealed carry market with the SIG P365. And the reason for that is because they have like a well-known brand. They've been well-established. They've been a staple in every FFL store. They sponsor a lot of the events, and they do a great ground-up approach. And they also then combine it with a top-down marketing campaign as well. And that is why they have so many people who are fanatical about the SIG brand, even if guns blow up or guns aren't drop safe, or when you pull the trigger, the gun doesn't go off, and then it only goes off when you move the bolt handle up. And they can kind of get away with it because they had already built up a lot of credibility, and they're still a massive company. Same thing, let's say, for example, like Springfield with the Hellions and the Prodigy and the Springfield 2020 Rimfire. Springfield has, I wouldn't say they've produced unsafe firearms, but they've produced plenty of crappy quality control guns. And they're still, because they're such a well-known brand and so well-established in the United States, they can slap their name onto any crappy gun made overseas. Hint, hint, that's actually what they do. And they're going to sell a whole bunch of them anyway. But if you're not a known of company, relatively speaking, you basically, if you screw something up, most people are not going to give you that a chance, or they're not going to give you that opportunity. And I think that's why what was actually a pretty good gun, they just completely fumbled and foobarred. So that's on the CZ600. That's from the perspective of being a smaller brand and being more niche-y. Actually, let me know how the audio is. It seems like it might possibly be peaking a little bit too much. So let me know on that in the comments. Okay, so then the other aspect to it, and one of the questions that somebody has, like, okay, well, it's like, why is the switch barrel system such a big deal? It's like, we're like, well, who cares that it's not a switch barrel system? And generally speaking, I would say, yeah, you know what? You're probably right. It is, to a greater degree, it's not the primary reason to buy a particular rifle. However, the biggest challenge is that they overpromised and underdelivered in almost every single piece of marketing material when the gun was launched. So once again, it's not, let's say, for example, they're not Ruger or Savage or Remington or SIG. They're not even, let's say, a Mossberg, where they can just come out with a new product, and because they have so much brand enthusiasm and there's so much heritage and history behind it, that people are going to line up and buy it. Relatively speaking, outside of those, let's say, for example, like if CZ came out with a brand new 22 and it was an evolutionary type design or they improved something, people would line up out the doors and get it. Same thing, let's say, for example, anytime CZ launches a new handgun, people go out there and they line up and they get it because that culture and heritage is already there. But when they come out with something new, so for example, when they didn't involve the CZ75 and they came out with the P01 and the P01C and the P07, relatively speaking, those were like marketing failures. And it quickly became like a brand new product, which was actually pretty good. And then heavy ass discounts and complete mess ups. Why? Because CZ was known as the competition gun. They weren't really meant to compete with Glock. And it's like, well, why? If you want a polymer plastic fantastic, why don't you just get a Glock, which has more aftermarket and all of that type of stuff. Now, from the rifle perspective, the 600, so it is an evolutionary type design. They took the best of both worlds. They took the best of the push feed actions. They put the best of the controlled round feed actions. And they came out with this new action, which is super smooth and all of that stuff. Is that enough to basically get somebody who is used to shooting a Tika or Weatherby or a Howard to go to CZ? No, it's not. It's definitely not. But what kicked people over that fence was, hey, you know what? We're going to get you an accurate rifle, which is to be expected. We're going to get you a ergonomic stock, which is to be expected. We're going to get you a smooth feeding action, which you should expect. And for that same price point, we're going to give you the ability to swap your own barrels. And the way that the bolt design, you'll be able to swap the bolt, you'll be able to swap the barrel, and it's 3 Torx screws, and you can do it at the range, and it's awesome. And that was an amazing selling point for that, because you're not going to find a rifle at under $1,000 which will let you easily do that. Now, can you swap a barrel on a Howard, Remington, or a Tika, or any of those? Yes, but you relatively need to have go-no-go gauges. You need to have a barrel vise. You need to have more tools. It's not a simple, okay, well, this isn't Torx, but pretend it's a Torx wrench. If you have a Torx T25, or I think they use the T30, you'll be able to swap out your barrel quick and easy. And it's not even necessarily, for example, like it's cool to be able to go from, let's say, a 6.5 Creedmoor to a 6 Creedmoor to a 308, depending on what you're looking for. And I would basically say I don't know many people who are going to be switching from one to the other generally at the range. However, where it's going to make a huge difference is, let's say, for example, you want to buy a gun in a cool caliber. Let's say, for example, like I want to buy it in 7.62 by 39, but you know what? It would be, because that would be great for hunting. And what would be really cool is I want to play around with 224 Valkyrie or 6 Arc or 6.5 Grendel, or like, hey, you know what? I want to practice with a 223. That is a big selling point, because you have that exact same thing, just swap out the barrel, and as long as they're reasonably priced, it's awesome. The other one is, let's say, for example, you're shooting a caliber such as 6 Creedmoor, and you are either shooting it for matches and you burn that barrel out after, let's say, call it 1,500 rounds. Well, now you can call up CZ or go online and you can be like, hey, let me go order a replacement barrel. And anybody who can unscrew a bottle can put in a brand new barrel. If you can twist 3 Torx screws, you'll be able to replace it. And I think that was the real value behind it, because you wouldn't need to go to a gunsmith or any of that stuff. So that's the reason why I was primarily excited about that capability, and that was the reason why people possibly spent a little bit more money on that. And then they basically pulled the rug under that, and it really kind of threw everything under, I would say threw it under the bus, because now it's like, okay, well, you either, I mean, on one hand, there are definitely people that I know that feel jaded from the perspective like CZ screwed him over. So one of the things I discussed, and I even discussed it on, so I did 3 videos on the 600, including the last one, which was the review. Well, before the review was the recall video. And then I did 2 videos, one talking about the rifle and one kind of talking about for like asinine decisions. But one of the things that I postulated was, is replacement barrels actually sustainable? And I postulated that I wouldn't be surprised if they stop offering it, because you have to be able to support it. And when your gun is not going to be popular enough to sell anyway, it might end up costing you more money. And it is possible that the whole, well, we're doing a recall because the gun was possibly not safe, so we're fixing the barrels in place, that might have been just basically a BS excuse in order to renege on the whole user swappable barrels thing. It is possible. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised about that. But that's the reason why people felt jaded, because when they came out, like the people who were really excited about it, they won and they spent $800 on the gun. They bought it, and then, okay, well, now you don't have that feature anymore, and we're going to fix it in place. We're like, okay, well, for that money, I could have bought something that has a little bit more aftermarket, because while the base CZ600 was pretty nice, no aftermarket triggers, no aftermarket stocks. Scope bases were, I believe, actually on some of them, like it was an aluminum receiver on the alphas, on the steel ones. I believe they actually used a 700 scope base, so that might have been not bad. But the aftermarket wasn't really going to develop for those rifles, and you weren't going to be able to, you can't just go to a regular barrel maker and get a replacement barrel. And the reason why for that is, so one of the things that makes the 600 unique, and one of the reasons why it's accurate, so it's a 6-lug bolt, but it's in 3 rows, and the reciprocal lugs that the bolt locks into, they're not on the receiver, but they're actually built into the barrel. So the vast majority of barrel, you need specific CNC machines, or you need specific machines in order to be able to cut the lugs, the reciprocal lugs, inside that barrel. And I don't think anybody, so kind of like with the Desert Tech, the way that people do it with Desert Tech is the aftermarket barrel makers, they do a regular barrel that's threaded, and then they do an aftermarket receiver extension, and they cut the lugs into that. I don't think anybody was actually planning on doing that for the 600. So even if you have a 600 right now, you're not going to be able to get an aftermarket barrel for it. So your only option is really going to be to send it to CZ. And for $800, it's like there's cool stuff, but is it actually worth it? I don't think so. And that is actually a big reason why most recently, so they dropped the prices from about 800 down to about 580 and change. Some of the dealers actually have it for as low as like 489, 499. And then CZ started the summer with a $50 mail-in rebate. And then about a couple of weeks ago, they got rid of the $50 mail-in rebate, and now it's a $100 mail-in rebate. So the gun now, if you get it in 6.5 Creedmoor, you can get it for $399 after mail-in rebate. So it's just nuts. Sounds like, okay, well, it's half the price. And for that money, well, now we're no longer competing at the higher price point. For that type of money, it's not bad at all. And when you're comparing it to a Savage Axis, a Ruger American, any base Howa, it's fantastic. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. And so the one link, I actually put the link in the video. So if you go to, and you can help the channel out if you buy it. So I'm posting the link now. It's going to be right in the comments. And let me show it on stream. So that's going to take you to a link to grab a gun. And so if you buy from there, it is an affiliate link. The channel does get a little bit of credit. But so on the website, they only list it as a $50 mail-in rebate, but it's actually a $100 mail-in rebate. So it's truly a fantastic money, a fantastic value. And as soon as I get my check back from CZ, I will be ordering another one. Instead of 6.5 PRC, I'm going to order it in 6.5 Creedmoor, and we're going to take a whole brand new look with it. But it's truly an incredible value for that price. So that's on the 600. So we talked about the barrel swap abilities. Now, another comment that I recently got, and actually this one's still going to be on my phone. This one I actually just got today. I'm like, interesting thought. Okay. Ooh, okay, this is perfect. So Kevin, my Savage Axis is accurate and super nice trigger and group sub MOA. It's mind blowing for under $500. So I would say the vast majority of Savage rifles are going to be fairly accurate. They did have a lot of accuracy issues in the past, but I don't think they are. Ooh, wow. We're going to be joined by a really cool dude. I'm going to bring you on in a second, sir. So the Savage Axis, I think, is a fantastic rifle for the money. I do have one. I bought one at a Cabela special. It was like $269 after mail-in rebate. Actually, they still haven't paid me my mail-in rebate, which is a good reminder. And they're generally really, really, really good rifles for the money as long as you get it with the newer AccuTrigger. Some of the cheaper Axis, they come with the old original trigger, which is just like super heavy and all that stuff. I would even compare like the Ruger American, the Savage 110, and almost the Axis in that same type of level. They are generally sub-MOA guns with good quality ammo, but they don't have that smooth bolt action. They're not, let's say, for example, optimized or things like that, which the 600 feels super smooth. I mean, I was just positively surprised every time I pick up that action. The gun is, so if anyone's ever played with Tikas or the Springfield 2020, the 600 action is that level of smooth. It is a fantastic one, and if you don't need the upgrades, the 600 would blow any Axis out of the water. The other particular thing with the Axis, and people have been asking me about the switchback and 6 arc. So I am going to have, that's going to be the next major video that's going to be released this week. Everything is done completely with it. And then we're going to really start playing with that rifle. So the 110 action, there's 2 actions, kind of like the Ruger Americans. There's the standard action, there's the long action. The thing with the Axis is it's a rifle made to fit a particular price point. Keep that in mind. It is not a rifle that was built to be an incredibly accurate rifle. It wasn't a rifle that was built to be the best rifle that it could be. It wasn't meant to revolutionize anything. The Axis is designed with one point in mind. It's a good enough rifle that's going to be cheaper to produce, and they can customize it, throw it into different types of stocks for any of your distributors or wholesalers, and it was meant to fit a price point. It just happens to shoot fairly well. So the issue with the Axis is it's one action size for all of the calibers, and they have everything fit into it. So whether you're shooting a 300 Win Mag Axis or a 223 Axis, it's the same size action. So you're running it more than you need to. It's not going to be optimized for a particular shorter cartridge. The fit and finish on it isn't going to be as smooth. So there's a lot of, let's put it this way, if somebody was looking for a better rifle, you can absolutely find a better rifle, but it was meant for somebody, let's say, for example, hey, I'm not going to be shooting all the time. I am, let's say, for example, I'm going to go hunting once or twice a year, and I just need something that I can easily beat upon, and if it breaks, it breaks. It's not going to be too much of a burden. And for that, the Axis fits really, really well. I mean, it's almost kind of like the Patriot, almost kind of like fills that same price point. And it's only recently, for example, that like Savage is one of those companies that they're not afraid to experiment with various models and configurations, almost like Legacy Sports with Howa. So you can go on Savage's website and you can get the 110 action stuck into 4 different chassis options, 5 different stocks, different barrels, different everything. And we even started taking the Axis and putting it into the Oryx chassis and some of the others. But depending on the caliber that you're playing with, it's like, look, it's like if you can spend a little bit more money, you can get much better guns out there for that money. But if all you have is a Savage Axis budget, then I would say it's definitely a much better shooting rifle than almost over any Patriot that you're going to be able to find. Even though the Patriot has a smoother feeling action, the problem with the Patriots is their barrels. Despite both the Axis and the Patriot, it's the same company that makes barrels for both of them. The ones coming out of the ones made for Savage are actually fairly much a little bit more accurate. The Axis, I'm sorry, the Mossberg ones, they're just pencil thin, and after like 2 or 3 rounds, it just goes all over the world. So it's different quality control. So I'm not really surprised by that. But the 110 is actually fairly nice. I think Savage's biggest issue is going to be the fit and finish, the quality control, things like that. And it's that. Now, one of the comments that popped up, and kind of like the reason where I was heading with that is, so there was a comment, I just got it about 2 hours ago. Okay, so this was on a Savage Savage 300 PRC Elite Precision, which comes 30-inch heavy barrel in a MDT ACC chassis. And the question, so the comment was, not at all taken away from the good video, but every single thing that you mentioned that could be improved on always gets changed or modified by guys like us, and Savage knows it. This is a long-range precision rifle platform ready to be made user-specific. Just my thoughts, as this is the very reason I have one and have it tailored for me. So the thing that I have an issue with is absolutes, such as always. I promise you that the vast majority of the people that are buying a rifle are not going to make any modifications to it whatsoever. They are not going to be buying a $2,000 gun and then be like, okay, well, now that I bought it, let me also swap out a different muzzle brake. Let me swap out a different trigger on it. Let me swap out a different stock. They're not going to do that. Because if you're already going to that level of customization and modification, then you might as well go the custom route, or you wouldn't be buying an upgraded model. You'd buy the base model, which has the same barreled action, and you would stop wasting your money. So my belief, and from the statistics that I've seen, is that the vast majority of the rifles, the way that you see them coming on the store shelves is going to be how it is, with the exception of the 2 or 3% of the people that are actually going to modify their guns and be taking it out there. I know a lot of the people, particularly before I started the YouTube channel, that they would, let's put it this way, you're going to go buy, I want to go shoot long range, and by long range, we're talking 300 to 400 to 500 yards, and I need a 338 Lafroy Ruger Precision or Savage 110, and those rifles are just going to be bought, and no one's going to modify anything besides putting a scope on them. And on that, tell me if I'm wrong, and Mr. Guest, give me a thumbs up if you're ready. And what do you think about that thought?
Well, generally thinking, can you hear me okay? I'm testing your
I can hear you fine, but while you're talking, I am going to get my headphones.
Excellent. Well, while he's gone, I'd like to point out that by definition, generally speaking, whenever he's speaking, he's probably wrong. Unless he's specifically agreeing with me, then he might be right. Not guaranteed still.
All right.
Did you hear any of that?
No.
Good, excellent. So question for you. You mentioned, I was sitting here listening for a couple of minutes.
Give me 1 second. Let me actually just switch I'm going to switch to the headphones. Okay, go ahead.
You mentioned that Axis barrels are no longer made by Savage. It's not the same place that makes the 110 barrels?
So a lot of the Axis barrels, I have to confirm still, but they were made for them by Bergara.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know. So because when Axis first started, the whole idea behind Axis rifles was that so Savage has this comparative, well, not that old anymore, equipment to make barrels. And Savage barrels are surprisingly accurate straight out of the factory.
Yes.
Because
They are.
basically they figured out how to drill a long hole straight. Their bores are rough, they lose accuracy fairly quickly, they foul fairly quickly, and all that, but they can drill a straight hole. And they were able to do it inexpensively and in quantities. So the idea behind Access to was to basically take the same exact barrels, pop in the same exact trigger, make everything else as cheap as possible, knowing fully well that 95% of the accuracy, other than the shooter, is the barrel and the trigger. And that's why Access guns were regionally accurate. I did not know that they started outsourcing the manufacture of those barrels.
So particularly when Vista Outdoors, well, before it was when they acquired Savage that first time, basically the people that came in, and there's a massive culture war between the people at Savage and the people at Vista Outdoors, and the entire
basically
premise
gun people and anti-gun people. Okay.
Gun people and capitalists, and honestly, a lot of the people, let's put it this way, the president of Vista Outdoors at that time, I mean, he never held a gun in his life. I mean, he sold TVs for LG. He was never really in the firearms industry. And the entire premise, so kind of like they're trying to copy Cerberus Capital, which we were doing with the Freedom Group, which was we're going to buy up a bunch of smaller companies at a multiple of 3, and then we're going to package them together, and then we're going to list it in the public markets at a multiple of 12, and now we just 4x'd our money, and we just 4x'd our investment. That was the premise behind all those moves, and actually why a lot of so that move was also replicated by the American outdoor brands and Smith & Wesson, and taking iconic brands like, for instance, Gemtech. They literally, the entire premise of the market was, let's package up a bunch of smaller companies, and then we're going to throw them together in one big diversified company, and we'll be able to exit that way. And then it was the New York Teachers Union. They started basically questioning, hey, what is this Cerberus? What is this Freedom Group? And why are we generating such extravagant returns? Oh, it's guns. Yeah, we're not doing anything with that. They brought publicity to that, and then started bringing in activist shareholders, and the entire plan for going public kind of basically got screwed. Vista Outdoors and Smith & Wesson, they were already publicly traded companies, so they were buying out smaller companies, but the problem for them was a lot of these acquisitions were debt levered, and so they were overpaying for a lot of these companies, and they were borrowing money at the same time, and they were close to on a verge of bankruptcy, particularly Vista Outdoors. And they literally started cutting costs as what they were supposed to. And when Vista basically kind of hit that final point where they needed to raise equity, the owners of Savage, they borrowed some more money, and then they bought themselves out. And so things are starting to kind of get back for them a little bit, but quite a few of the Savage items are outsourced and produced elsewhere, kind of like with Stevens. And even, for example, like the new Stevens rifle, which is pretty decent. It's actually a rebadged ATA Tarkwa from Turkey. So it's basically, it's the same gun that, what was it, Four Peaks Imports tried to bring in under its own brand. And kind of same thing at Springfield. So I do know that quite a few of the barrels, I don't know if it was for all of the lines, but when I spoke to them at least a couple of years ago, the barrels were outsourced. I don't know if it's still permanent or not, but they kind of look fairly familiar to Bergara. And same thing, like, so for example, Mossberg has their barrels made for them by Bergara. And it's really truly about, okay, well, what type of quality control that you're ordering on these, and kind of like, well,
yeah, I don't think that's Bergara's best.
Yeah, I mean, Bergara can put a good rifle together. I'm sure they can, but they also put together some horrible basic stuff. It's almost like if you go to any manufacturer, it's like, okay, you want cheap, they can do cheap. You want quality, they can do quality for you as well. And I guess that's part of the issues for the whole gun industry as it is. So
it sounds about right.
So, what is new in your world, sir? We
I'm
haven't
just
seen you on a
recovering from
little bit.
COVID, so again.
You had COVID again?
Yeah. Managed to go, still snuck out for a day of hunting with COVID, but my official
Yeah,
theory is that the pronghorn avoided me because they didn't want to get infected.
got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Well, hold on, but hold on. As far as I know, you got the best scientific and medical treatment possible for it, and you're not supposed to get COVID ever again after you're
Who,
forced
me?
to get that shot. Yes.
Well, I got the shot like 4 years ago, and I was forced because I had to do it for work. No, normally I get COVID every year after SHOT Show. Natural immunity lasts for about a year.
So you're good for this
Immunity
year's
from
SHOT Show.
the vaccination lasts for about 3 months, 3.5. Natural immunity about a year. I had a horrible reaction to the vaccination, right? So I'm not doing that vaccination again. Normal vaccinations, I don't have an issue with COVID. COVID vaccine was horrible for me. So all
Yes,
I
it
know
was.
now is that when I go to SHOT Show in January, I'm not going to get COVID again.
All right. So we are going to talk in depth about SHOT Show. So on our private content creator Discord group, we almost had like a little bit of a shit fit discussion, particularly on the importance of SHOT Show. So there's somebody in our group that wanted to go, and then I'm like, well, okay, you should really try to make it if you're trying to take your channel more seriously. We'll get to that. All right, so totally surprised me coming from the Remington 700, the adjustable trigger on my Axis. Very happy with it. So I guess here's the question though: is this due to the Axis being good, or the Remington 700s being atrocious garbage recently?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think I said it already, but it's something that people don't give enough credence to. Assuming a marginally competent shooter, the accuracy of the gun to 90-something% is the barrel and the trigger. And Savage understood that before anyone else did. All right. Savage understood very early on you can have a somewhat flimsy action. You can have it look like it was finished by a file in the caves of Tora Bora in Afghanistan, right? As long as your barrel is marginally stiff, as long as your stock is marginally stiff, as long as your barrel is drilled straight, as long as you have a decent trigger, first 3 shots are going to be okay. And that's more than enough for hunting.
Yeah.
Right?
Um,
Then all the other things come into play, how the barrel is mated to the receiver, how stiff the receiver is, and all sorts of other jazz.
yeah.
But for the first
And
three
this,
shots,
yeah.
it doesn't.
Yeah, and this is actually the exact same playbook that Ruger had for the Ruger American. So one of the things that people are surprised about is Ruger doesn't actually employ gunsmiths on a regular line. They're just regular people who are competent enough to slap parts together. So speaking with their product people, speaking with their engineers, all of their engineering, everything is spent on the manufacturing side of it, so that when the parts come out of it, they are going to be good. And one of the things that like they feel very strongly about is that, so for example, like when I was at a 1,000-yard range, there was somebody who was shooting the Ruger PC carbine 9mm out at 300 to 350 yards. I'm like, okay, that is crazy. Then when I spoke with Mark, who's their product guy, I'm like, Mark, the hell? He's like, oh yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I'm really, really glad to see that, because so the barrels that we have in the PC carbine are some of the most concentric barrels that we've ever made. And basically he started going for the conversation. And that's why the Axis and the 110 and the Ruger American, they're fair. Pretty much all of them are going to be sub MOA out of the box with good quality ammo if you do your part as a shooter. Now, getting it to sub half MOA is a completely different story, but they can do sub MOA. Like, I mean, the manufacturing and the precision is there. It's good enough in order to get you to hit steel at 400-500 yards. And talking about our Savage Axis, so the cheap one that I bought from Cabela's at the Black Friday special 3 years ago, I got it out to 750 yards with that crappy second focal plane scope that it came with. So you can do it. It's totally doable. I would definitely replace the scope that's on there. However, you can absolutely go out there and shoot it. Is it going to be match precision out to 1,500 yards? No. Is it threaded? No. Is it going to be able to keep those groups for 5-10 shot groups? it's going to be extremely difficult, and probably I would say not. But if you're looking for a basic gun to teach someone how to shoot or go hunting once a year, it's perfectly capable and adequate for that. And when you have that, so kind of going back to that 600, the 600 for that same price point is an actual real good gun, just with a lot of marketing issues. So now, actually,
Wait,
Ilya, have you
CZ with
played?
marketing issues? No.
Yeah, I know. Can you believe it? And PS, so I've tried to get a gun from CZ for like 4 years. Nope, nothing, not one. So all the CZs I've actually purchased with my own money.
Nope.
Hey, you weren't the only one with the Koof talk. Mr. Flying Rich also did.
What is Koof talk?
The Woo.
What's wrong with
Some
that?
people, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't exist in Florida. No, just saying that I was surprised how
Okay.
decent it is compared to the old 700. It was late 60s or so, one of the good ones. Yeah. I'm not surprised. So, for example, like the Savage 110 that we got from Sportsman's Warehouse was also um, the Savage 110 from Sportsman's Warehouse, also super accurate. And what I'm really excited about now, we're going to have the video this week on the actual review on the gun. And then I have all the aftermarket accessories on it that we can really start stretching out the barreled action. And I'm super excited to see what we can do. So with the stock Ruger American 6.5 Grendel barreled action, we were able to stretch it to 1,500 yards. I'm fairly positive we should be able to hit that same 1,500 yards with that stock Savage Access. I'm sorry, Savage 110 action and 6 arc, and possibly let's see if we can do it to a mile. It should be doable. So it'll be fun. All right. So topic of SHOT Show. So one of the things, and we do have a couple of creators in here, and actually, Rich, if you want to come on and discuss this as well, let me know. We'll kind of bring you on. Ryan is also here as well. So one of the people in our group, what are you playing with?
Oh, you don't care about this kind of stuff.
You're covering the brand.
Intentionally.
Okay. Element. No, oh, is that the new? Was the Hyper 7?
That's a 5-power prismatic, yeah.
Nice. All right, we can talk
That's
about
my
that
baby.
too. Actually, here, let's talk about that. So actually, one of them. So one of the ones we were discussing. So this year, since I have the optics guy, I might as well talk to him about this. So one of the things we were discussing, and one of the products that really started making some headways is from Vortex, and that is, what are we calling it? It was the rangefinder with the ballistics. What's the name of it? I don't have it open.
The Ranger 4000.
Yes,
The one the one that goes on the gun, or the one that's handheld?
the one that goes on the gun.
Oh, this one. That's the Impact 4000.
Impact 4000.
Yeah.
All right, so walk us through that, because so if you guys haven't seen this thing is fantastic. Let me make you big.
It is fantastic. So it has a Picatinny mount on the bottom. You pop it on your gun, top, side, whatever works. The screen on the back can work vertically or horizontally. There is a separate, I have it here somewhere. I'm moving. Because I had a flood in my house, everything's all over the place. There you go. So there is a separate remote control. There are 3 different mounts for it. You mount it somewhere else on your rifle so that it is accessible, or you can, press a button on the unit itself. Some people mount it on the like a diving board above the scope. I mount it on the left side of the handguard like this vertically.
Mm-hmm.
That works a little bit better for me. And basically, the whole idea is that you can range to your target without getting up from the scope, without holding anything else, without releasing your hold. Basically, you line up behind the rifle, and your right eye is looking through the scope. And the way I mount mine is it's on the left side, so I can range, and with the left eye, I can see what the range is. It has up to 10 ballistic profiles and all that sort of stuff. I haven't yet figured out if it can talk directly to my Kestrel. The handheld Razor 4000 that Vortex has, this talks to the Kestrel and gives me wind holds looking through the laser rangefinder. I haven't yet figured out if the impact also hooks up to the wind meter or not. I will shortly. And that's basically that.
So the question goes, as I was saying, so the impact 4000. So the premise of it is, okay, it's going to range the target and it's going to give you a shooting solution. Now, Vortex purchased their own ballistics company that basically designed the software. So why would you want that to talk to a Kestrel?
For wind.
So I guess for the wind. Okay, for the wind. Just the wind.
So I was forever and a day I was using a Leica rangefinder, the 3500.com. The love deal. I actually just sold it to a friend of mine who wanted it, and this less expensive Vortex Razor 4000 replaced it for me. And if my friends at Leica hear about it, they'll be very upset. But truth is truth. Leica is slightly better optically than this guy, and it's slimmer and all that sort of stuff. For me, being able to range a target and get the drop and the wind is absolutely critical. Within most solutions that talk to Kestrel, Kestrel gets the distance from the laser rangefinder and calculates the solution and takes in the wind data from itself, etc., which is great. But that means that I need to range it, then I need to look at my wind meter, then I need to go to the gun. Right? It's me shooting alone, which is what happens most of the time. Right? My preference is to be looking at the target, looking at what's happening, laze it, get a full solution, and then transition to the rifle. Okay.
Now, are there any solutions that automatically talk to the Kestrel on an ongoing basis to get the wind and input that into a shooting solution?
Yeah, this guy.
But that's still not going to send it to the scope, for instance. I mean, the premise of the impact
not to the scope,
is that
no. The stuff that sends to the scope exists, but not for civilians.
Okay.
Well, I mean, kind of exists. So Steiner has for the IFS rifle scopes, some of the 1550 very expensive laser rangefinders with a Bluetooth dongle will send a ballistic solution to the scope and show it to you in the scope, but no wind yet.
Okay.
For the wind stuff, you have to go to things that are not currently available to consumers, but I'm sure it's coming. Okay. So the advantage of this guy is that it sits on a rifle. So I'm looking at the target through my scope, and then I laze it, and I never have to look through any other optic. Now, you have to bore sight it to the scope, and you have to know how to use it, right? Because what happens is that you bore sight the impact, the weapon-mounted laser rangefinder, to where you are zeroed. If you're a dialer, once you dial your turrets, whatever aiming point you're aiming at, that's not where the laser rangefinder is pointing anymore. So for people who hold with the reticle, it's very natural because your primary aiming point is where the laser rangefinder is pointing. You use that to laze, and then you hold over. If you dial, you need to be aware of how much you've dialed, or you need to measure the range. When you're 0, then dial. If you want to range again, you have to go back to 0 or know where the laser rangefinder is pointing, above the primary. So there is a learning curve, but it's viable.
So does Vortex cover that in their material for the people who are buying it? Because I'm sure there's going to be people who are using it at longer distances.
So I will be honest with you. The way I do these things, I absolutely ignore the manual and start putzing around with it.
Yep.
Or, I don't know, you're on YouTube. Do you get demonetized if I drop a few F-bombs?
You're fine. We're on a live stream.
Excellent. So basically, I start fucking with this thing and trying to figure out who's going to get fucked. Usually me. But But that's basically that. After that, I look at the manual. And I haven't had the impact for very long yet. I just haven't read the manual yet.
Okay.
I hope they do. I had a meal earlier this week, one of the Vortex guys who was, going hunting, coming through town. So, that it's, I'm sure people will screw this up, whether it's in the manual or not.
Yeah.
They should cover it with the manual because he was aware of it and he had input into the manual.
So, I mean, for example, like if I guess it really depend on two things. Number one, it's going to depend on how big of a target you're trying to measure the distance to lays, and then the second one is going to be how far it's going to be as well. Because if, let's say, for example, like you're shooting, let's say, between 100 to 300 to 400 yards on an IPSC target, whether you dial in or not, it's still going to be, it could be on the bottom of the IPSC target, or it could be the top of the IPSC target. But if you're, let's say, for example, you're going to 700-800 yards or 1,000 yards, or you're going on a smaller steel plate or an animal, if you've already dialed in from 100 to 1,000, well, your laser is pointing at the trees instead of being pointing at the target itself.
Yes. So this is going to be basically the issue of, as you train, of developing good practices, right? Nothing is ever foolproof. Once again, there are systems out there where the laser is coupled to the aiming point. You adjust the aiming point, the laser moves with it. But you cannot easily do it with something that's separate, right? For integrated systems, there are some fun solutions out there, but they are outside of the scope of what you can get as a civilian.
So how much do you think of an issue that's possibly going to be, and then where it might just be better off to get like a pair of range-finding binos that will laser range it and then give you the shooting solution? Or let's say, for example, like the SIG BDX system, where it'll do you can range it off of the gun, and then it'll do the calculations, talk to the Kestrel for the wind, and send it to the scope, and you just hold over right in the scope, and that's it. So it's almost kind of like the solution.
So does BDX talk to the Kestrel and send you the wind solution to the scope?
It's been a little bit since I played with it, but I'm 99% positive you can actually do that through that.
Yeah, so if you have somebody else shooting with you, it's always better if they're doing the observation, the distance, and the wind estimation, and who is pulling the trigger is pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
You don't always have that option. I don't have that option the vast majority of the time. So I have to make do with what I have. At shorter distances, I mostly hold with the reticle, so for me, that's not an issue. At longer distances, I do have to dial. And that's basically going to come down to best practices. Right, but even then, if I'm, let's say, transitioning between plates, something like that, I will dial to one of them, then I'll hold in between all the others. So for me, using this thing, like I said, it's going to come down to best practice. I have to train by keeping this thing in mind and making sure I know what I'm pointing at. It will also change a little bit how I design reticles. I may leave a little bit more of the vertical intact so that I can always know how much I've dialed, and if I'm trying to range, use a different spot in the reticle.
Okay. So, I mean, it almost seems like if you're seriously using this tool, you have to get it into your mindset of whatever you're doing, you're always going back to zero. You're ranging. So you shot the target, dial it back to zero, range it, then dial it back up to where you were, instead of, let's say, for example, I guess if you're using holdovers, you're just using holdovers. But let's say, for example, if you're just shooting at one distance and now you need to change, you need to remember, go back down to zero to laser again, to then go back and actually
if you're changing distances, basically, if you're a dialer and as you're changing distances, you will need to go back to zero and then dial again. Because if you are, if you got a solution and you shot at 900 and you realize you're off by, 2 clicks, right? If you dial those 2 clicks, given all the stability sets, you don't need to start going back to zero. But if you're going to a radically different distance, the right way of doing that with this device like this would be either to know with the reticle where the LRF is pointing, or go back to zero, laze, and then dial again.
Now, does it actually have it doesn't have any visible lasers or anything? It's just works like a regular. I'm sorry?
Oh, no, it has a visible laser. So for sighting in only.
Okay, for sighting in only.
So the way you do the sighting in, basically you go out somewhere when it's reasonably dark, turn on the visible laser. There is right here, there's a little thingy, you turn it and the visible laser is on. Turn on the visible laser, point somewhere 200 yards, 150, 100, whatever you're sighted in. With your scope, make sure the laser is exactly where your scope is pointing, you're sighted in.
Yeah. So who is the target market really for that tool?
No, I haven't had that conversation with Vortex yet. I think it's me. Maybe there are other people.
So by you, is it basically someone who's interested in tech and needs to have all the cool gadgets?
No, somebody who shoots alone a lot.
Okay.
I shoot far away, and I shoot alone most of the time. Okay, but there's a variety of other interesting communication features that Vortex has not released yet that will come through, where there's a lot more functionality that will unlock as they go along. But in the short term, it's basically for a guy who does not want to leave his rifle. Everything that we're talking about, dialing here, dialing there, all of that is an inconvenience. All of that is a much smaller inconvenience than putting your rifle away, grabbing laser rangefinder, and starting to look and trying to figure out what's happening.
Okay. So one of the things, so going back to SHOT Show, so over the last 2 SHOT Shows, we've seen a lot of tech develop around optics. So for instance, you were playing around with the Element Hyper. We have the new toys.
That's not the Hyper. The Hyper is in the safe. That's a different element.
Oh, that's a different prismatic. Okay. So for example, talking about the Hyper, or talking about.
You want me to pull it out, or?
Doesn't matter. It's the broader perspective. We'll get to it, and if you need to pull it out, you can pull it out. So we've had these tech tools. So you have, I would say probably the SIG BDX was the first broader consumer solution where you can range it and it sends the solution to the scope, and it's the digital focal plane. Then this year, Burris, so I mean, we've always had the Eliminator, but now also Burris has the, I call it the Velociraptor, but it's the
Veracity. Signature PH.
Yeah, so we had the Veracity, where you just dial in the distance. So you would sight it in, and then you dial in the distance, and this basically with the app, instead of dialing in clicks, you're just dialing in the distance, and it has the heads-up display on the reticle itself. So it seems like all of these solutions that are out there, they're kind of coming from a different perspective of what it'll do. So for instance, seems like with the Vortex Impact, the point is you're on the gun and you don't need to come off the gun in order to range the target and to get a solution, and then you dial it in. The SIG one is like, okay, well, how about we just range it, and then you don't need to make any adjustments, and we're going to highlight the point. And then you have the Burris solution, which, well, I guess the Eliminator is you range it and it just moves it for you, and then you do that, versus the Veracity is you range it to find the distance, and that's all you need to know. And then you just dial in the distance on a heads-up display, and you're ready to shoot. So it seems like they're using technology to kind of like fix 2 out of the 3 parts of shooting, but it doesn't seem like there's a complete solution that you can be on the gun, press a button, it'll range it, sends it to the scope, and in the scope it highlights where to hold it over, and you don't need to dial anything in.
Yeah, it exists. Different versions of it.
Okay.
Well, Hyper is getting there, actually. That's the commercial solution. The good solution is the Vortex XM157.
Well, it's the military one.
Yes. But, they developed the technology. I assure you that eventually it'll make it into a consumer product. You also have to keep in mind is that for that particular tender, Vortex was not the only company bidding. There were different companies bidding on it. So you can and the ones that lost out, they will still want some sort of return on their investment in developing the technology for that particular company. It's somewhat similar to what Vortex did, somewhat is different. It accomplishes somewhat similar purpose. I do think Vortex had the best solution there, but there were other solutions I'm aware of that was very, very strong. And I would be very, very surprised if they did not make it into the commercial world in some way, shape, or form. Even newer companies like Mastech with the X4 coming and adding the same more or less functionality to any low power variable scope. Element is trying to add more or less the same functionality into a prismatic with a Hyper 7. And that technology can, in principle, I talked to the guy who came up with it, can, in principle, be added to other types of rifle scopes. All of this, we'll call it electro-optic integration. All of that's coming. All that's going to change how we shoot. None of it is going to make us better shooters. You still have to practice.
So I was actually about to mention that. So with all of these changes, with all of these helping aids? Is it going to dumb us down as shooters? So obviously it's not going to help you pull the trigger back. It's not going to give you trigger discipline, but is it going to take away, I would say, a certain skill for estimating wind, or let's say, for example, like being able to do math and knowing what you need to dial in, where you're just going to have this crutch that basically what happens when a battery runs out or you have snow falling and your laser rangefinder doesn't work for crap anymore.
Well, as a general consideration, I'm happy all this stuff is coming because all of that just gives me an advantage
Yeah.
because I practice it in all different ways. To address something you said a moment ago, Americans already cannot do math. You can thank your educational system for it. It's retarded. As far as the rest of it goes,
So I'll kind of give you the
so
story.
there
And
will be a short-term effect of people
Okay.
thinking that they are Carlos Cathcock, David Tubb, and Super Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle all in one. And when they miss exactly the same way as they did before the technology became available, some of them will quit shooting and others will go and practice.
Okay.
Practice is practice, tools are tools. It will make
Sure.
all of this stuff is going to make it easier for you to make hits at long distance without a shooting partner.
Okay.
That's
I
pretty
agree
much
with
it.
that.
Yeah.
What I will basically
It's
say
not
on the
going to
flip
make you a
side.
better shot. All the wind
Sure.
measurements we currently do are still done at the shooter position. You still
Yep.
have to look at the terrain. You still have to look at the grass. You still have to look at primary and secondary wind indicators and figure out how to adjust the solution you get from Kestrel. If you go strictly with what Kestrel tells you, you're usually going to be off if you're, for example, shooting across a canyon, or if you have unusual surface morphology between you and the target, or if you're shooting very
But
far away and bullet path is much higher than your line of sight, right? So there's a variety of
but
problems.
alas, there was a tech solution to that specific problem as well. I believe it was two SHOT Shows ago. I believe it was Trigicon, or who was it that was making that LiDAR?
Trigicon Ventus. It's not
Okay.
a solution. There are other
Now,
solutions.
what's the status of that? Because I mean, so when it was coming out, when they made a big deal about it at SHOT Show, it was like, and I believe it was King of 1 Mile or King of 2 Mile. They basically changed the rules to explicitly not allow that solution, and they changed the rule in such a way that basically said you can have wind measuring devices that only measure wind at the shooter's location.
Correct.
And you cannot have
Kestrel.
any aids that will aid in looking at the wind or meteorological data forward of the shooting position. So did it
So I
actually
don't
work?
know
What's the
what
status?
happened with it. Trigicon people are no longer talking about it. The solution itself was decent, but not ideal because as a handheld device, it was really power hungry. There are 5 different lasers in it, and they were looking at some fairly complicated stuff and getting a very complicated solution. But there may also be regulatory issues
Okay.
in that. I know one company who had an interesting wind solution where they thought they had something good, and then the authorities showed up on their door and classified everything they were doing on the spot. Basically.
Okay.
I can think
So,
of 2 other ongoing developmental projects, one by a government agency with some industry support, another one by a purely private company to develop a wind measurement tool that is reliable. It's kind of moving slowly. One of the basic downsides of the Trigicon solution, they had 5 lasers looking at basically reflections from various trapped particulates in the air, looking at that and trying to figure out where the wind goes. And you were getting essentially this 3-dimensional wind map. But to be able to use that for a shooting solution, you basically need to know exactly which part of all of that the bullet is going to go through. But because it had to be handheld and still not run out of battery in 10 seconds, they also could not put in more powerful lasers to look fairly far away. And the basic problem is that If you are looking only within 500 meters, you really don't need to know that much about wind.
Exactly.
The fun stuff happens further out. The wind that affects the bullet the most is the wind at your shooting position. That is by far the largest component. And between you and 800-900 yards, you can make small adjustments. You don't need that much more than that. Where you really start needing more is when you start going further out, the bullet starts slowing down substantially, time of flight increases substantially. And your dispersion native to what the rifle does, angular dispersion remains the same. Linear dispersion at a longer distance becomes sufficiently large, where just a little bit more wind error and you're off. Because remember, right? So whether you're shooting at 100 yards, 500 yards, or 1500 yards, unless you're shooting at plates, if you think of the real world application, you're shooting at a target about the same size.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Your native error is the shooter error and natural rifle dispersion. And at shorter distances, it's well within the size of the angular substance of the target. Further out you go, the less additional error you can tolerate. And that's where these little bits of extra wind really screw you over.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes, it does. All right. So here's a question, and I guess somebody was the comment. So number one is Rich said that ATN already had a solution that was similar to that, and then along the same lines, it was, can we have all of this tech with night vision? So I'm assuming basically the Impact 4000, a lot of these stuff. I mean, you can put on a clip-on thermal
Yeah,
or
all
clip-on
this
night
stuff
vision.
doesn't care about night vision. All these solutions exist with night vision, with thermal, with day scopes, and all that sort of stuff. Just not for civilians.
Well, on the civilian side, we have, was it ATN? What's your take on that? Because it seems like there's people who in the chat, I'm going through the chat, there's people who've been happy with it, and people
That
who say,
ATN wind solution? ATN does
not
not
the
have a
wind
wind
solution.
solution.
No, not the wind solution, just night vision itself, and the
I talk about
tools.
digital night vision at the X site?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, if you have a good illuminator, like if your illuminator is strong enough to light up the moon, it's good enough to work with ATN X site. If it's weaker than that, you'll have problems. So most digital night vision up until very recently was very limited, and how well it worked was really just depended on how good your illuminator is. Without an illuminator, it was a bit of a crapshoot. With the latest cores from Psionics and others, we have night vision cores that kind of like Gen 2 Plus equivalent ballpark. And that core integrated into the rifle scope can work reasonable, still better with an illuminator, but even without an illuminator, at reasonable distances, it's not bad. With the right lens and all sort of jazz. The fundamental problem still is that you have fundamentally a battery-powered solution. All those low-light cores are somewhat battery-hungry. If you think about Psionics' latest, the night vision monocular, I mean, it's a serious battery pack on the back of your helmet. The helmet doesn't matter, you need a counterweight anyway. But no rifle scope, it starts making a difference.
Okay.
So digital night vision works, sort of, but not without some significant auxiliary additions.
Yep. What about on the thermal side? So it seems like one of the conversations they usually have, like when I go to local FFLs, like, hey, I want to go start doing night hunting. And the conversation usually comes up, okay, well, how much do you want to spend? And they'll start basically saying, yeah, like 2,000 to 3,000. And now it's like, so for the longest time, it's really been, okay, if you have a lower budget, you're basically forced to go night vision. If you have more money, you go thermal route. Now it seems like there's products you can get thermal that's very competitive to some of the night vision stuff. So kind of like, what's your take on it? So like, are any of the thermal solutions at around $3,000? Are they actually good? And actually, so the one that's really been brought up to me, so there's one by Sightmark. They have Sightmark thermal, and along the same lines, hey, you know what? So a year ago, when we were in Vegas, everyone was making a big deal out of the HoloSun night vision and thermal solutions. Do you have any updates to those that you can share?
So I don't have any sort of relationship with HoloSun, so I don't know where they are. What they showed last year at SHOT Show was about, you know what half-baked means? It was about half a mile before half-baked. So just don't know, right? So HoloSun is heavily funded by the Chinese military, so they have the money to do this kind of stuff. The way they were integrating their solution, I thought was flawed, but they were aiming at the primarily CQB short-range market.
Yeah.
So there, that type of a solution can work. It won't necessarily work, but it can work. And given how badly the Chinese military wants those things, they will probably come up with something viable and just use us as the means to develop it a little bit better. So that's HoloSun. Yeah, if you look at all the pictures of various Chinese troops, etc., all the red dots, everything on their issued rifles is always HoloSun. There's a reason for it. And they were never hiding it, right? So, I mean, HoloSun never lied to anybody about what they want to do. So that's
actually, I will say, like on this comment, this is actually really interesting. So you mentioned that the Chinese military is developing it by testing it on the U.S. consumer market and the U.S. market versus a lot of, I would say, a lot of the, I guess, would it be fair to say that the night vision and thermal stuff for the US or the Western world is first developed for the military and then gets brought down to the consumer level? They're not like SIG who beta tests on the consumer to then develop their more serious solutions.
So give me a moment for a little bit. Now I need to tread a little bit carefully.
So I guess, for example, like the Vortex stuff. Okay. So like the Vortex solutions that we're getting now.
So you asked thermal and other solutions, and I remember a question about thermal for $3,000. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
When United States military started developing thermal night vision, all this sort of things a long time ago, they were so expensive that there was no consumer market. It just didn't exist. And it was hard to develop, but there was a strategic need for us to have it, for us to own the night. Strategic need was defined in 1945 in the Battle for Okinawa at the end of World War II. And since then, the US was pushing hard, making sure that they are ahead of the curve. And over time, certain technologies were developed that allowed a lot of these things to be inexpensive enough to get down to consumer level. The fundamental problem with a lot of the stuff that the Chinese military does, or various Chinese companies do, is that they don't have that strong of a communication between military and commercial sector and all that. What some Chinese companies like HoloSun have been doing, they have been going to US market to figure out what to make. They are technically capable, and they've been very good in figuring out how to make stuff, sometimes by figuring things out on their own, and sometimes by making things on their own and innovating. Like I said, they are technically capable companies. But in terms of what to make, what sells, etc., the Chinese commercial entities have always had issues. And the sheer size of the US gun and accessories market is a spectacularly capable proving ground for what works, how well certain things are built, and things like that. It's not like HoloSun is beta testing their stuff on us, not at all. They do as good of a job as they can on it. But in terms of what to build, notice HoloSun throws 8 million different variants at the market. This type of illumination, that type of illumination, this color, this type of battery, this mounting system, that mounting system. You think they know which one is going to be hit and which doesn't? No, they have no freaking clue. They're trying to figure out what the civilian market is going to like the most. That gives them an indication of what works and what doesn't. right? It's more of a conceptualization than manufacturing that they need from us, if that makes sense.
It does.
With
So actually,
yeah.
so I was gonna say on that, so it almost seems like it's a lot of it, kind of like how I would say non-night vision stuff gets developed. So things, let's say for example, get developed in the competitive shooting circles that then basically get adopted by your military or law enforcement, and then it basically goes down to the civilian stuff. So I'm just even thinking, let's say for example, let's say shooting off of tripods or red dots on your carry gun. All of that stuff has been done for long time in the competitive shooting circles. Then it got basically adapted to military and law enforcement, and then it's the mass consumer market. So it almost seems like HoloSun is doing that with their optics and their products. They get the ideas. If it's not too hard, they make it, they throw it at the wall, they kind of see what sticks. And if it works, hey, if it's a trend, then they can really double down on it. And then the best of the best comes out of it.
No, that's not. It's a reasonable assessment. It also allows them to make something and figure out how to make something robust before they go for the military stuff.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Going back to your comment on thermals, yes, you can get perfectly decent thermal for about $3,000. That's the simple thing. The best, yes. Perfectly viable, no. I mean, in what, couple of weeks, I'm gonna go hog hunting. I'm gonna have a couple of new thermals there to test, do some articles on. But the two thermals that I have here in the safe, they are both $3,000 or less. They were $3,000 a couple of years ago when I got them, and they're perfectly sufficient for shooting pigs inside of a couple of 100 yards. But they are robust. They work well. One is from a company called AccuFire. It's their still, 384 by 388 by 284, 384 by 288, excuse me, core. And another one is a Burris BTC50. It's in a 400 by 300, so the lower resolution clip-on with 50mm objective. I like very much. Both of them were, I think, $3,000, a little bit less, a couple of years ago when they first came out. Both of them still work well. The newer stuff, you can probably get more performance for the same money. There are several that are memorable. iRay makes very nice stuff, but most of the good stuff from iRay is a little bit more money. But bearing optics for about $3,500, you can get a 640 by 480 thermal with a 35mm lens, which is very, very good. What else? The Burris has Gen 2 stuff for about $3,000. That's looking pretty good. I need to look at it. Somewhat low resolution, but very respectable. That went down. Smaller pixel pitch, nice and compact. Who else? There's somebody I'm not thinking of. Pulsar has a couple of models. I don't remember what they look like. They look kind of looks like a flashlight. It's their quote unquote budget model. They have a 640 by 480 version now for about $3,000. It will come to me in a moment. They all have these made up names that sound pretty, but I'm too old to remember all that shit.
Now, have you seen
I'll tell
the
you right
new,
now. I'm pulling up their page right now.
Have you seen the new Sightmark Wraith Pulsar?
So, Talion, the Talion line from Pulsar.
Okay.
So they actually have, it's very, very good for the money. XG35, I think, is the 640. But okay, right now it's 3,800, but I saw it on sale not long ago for about $3,000. Very good. Sightmark Wraith Thermal, that one?
Yeah. It's new. So apparently, like from some of the from some of the distributor shows, it won an award. So basically, with how those awards work, if you buy enough advertising, anybody can win an award.
Yeah, I don't pay attention to award because I've never seen anybody who awards those things who knows how to spell thermal much doesn't know what it does. Okay, I'm looking on Sightmark website. There is a Wraith Mini for 2100. That's a low resolution core, and so it's an older core. That's why they can keep the price right. It should be perfectly viable. I haven't played with this Wraith. I need to look at how they did the menu system. Then once I look at that, I can tell you who was the OEM, and from that I'll know the approximate performance. $2,100 for that is pretty good. I will say this: unless you are in a great rush, watch for deals. So Steiner, for example, made their first generation S35, C35, H35 thermal product line. S was the scope, C was a clip-on, H was a handheld. 35 millimeter lens, which is good sort of general purpose thing. 640 by 480 cores on the high side of resolution for modern thermals. The big difference was that I used the Chinese core from Guide infrared. There was no secret in it, but Steiner added their own processor. Boy, do they look impressive once you putz around a little bit with the menu settings. It was about $5,000, and I thought for $5,000 it was a really good deal. And then Steiner decided they need to go to Gen 2. So Gen 1 got cleared out. And for a couple of months, you could buy one for $2,200 or $2,300.
Wow.
A bunch of people did. I should have bought one, but it's very hard for me to convince myself to buy a thermal. Whenever I want to go use one, they send me a couple to play with. I take some pictures with a pig or two and send them back. It's difficult for me to invest in the thermal.
They don't send you thermals for keeps?
Oh, some of them do. Some.
Okay. So I guess the other one that
either way,
topic,
I don't insist on that. I don't particularly care. I just want to be able to do my evaluation. If it stays here or not makes no difference to me. I have enough stuff.
For those that are not familiar, what's the difference between Gen 1, Gen 2, and I guess what generation are we on right now?
So thermal does not have generations per se. It's not any that are commonly discussed. For Steiner, Gen 1, Gen 2, basically, that was their Generation 1 product. They decided they want to go to the next generation. It will probably have some better integration and things like that. For more serious companies, so thermal, night vision, etc., has been sort of the venue for all of these different cottage industries, right? All these smaller companies that would do this in their own weird, bass-backwards way. Now large companies are getting interested. Steiner Burris is a big one. They're owned by Beretta. It's a big freaking company. And Pulsar is a good-sized company and a few others. And they are professionalizing this whole industry to a good degree. Because now it's going to be supported by companies with real customer service departments and all that. Up to now, so if you wanted a thermal on a higher end for civilians, you would go to Trigicon. And as much as I like Trigicon, their customer service is not something that's usually characterized as anything beyond trying to slit your own throat, right? There was Envision. Envision is a small company. They're actually very, very good, and they do have good customer service.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I think in terms of image quality, they're still probably the best of the commonly commercially available stuff, but not cheap. And then the Chinese cores became available, and some people, if you are Burris or Steiner, their first generation stuff, they just went to a Chinese OEM and essentially slapped their name on it. And Steiner also added some of their own processing. Well, the Gen 2 stuff from the same OEM is going to be very customized to Burris and Steiner, because it takes time to develop expertise with the product to figure out what to do other than some image processing. Steiner knew image processing because of some other stuff they've done in the past. So then Gen 2 stuff is going to be better because the Chinese OEM has no clue what works. They understand how to make a thermal surveillance camera. They don't know anything about rifle scopes. Now Steiner and Burris know how to make a rifle scope. So the Gen 2 product is going to be something much better productized. Because Gen 1 was just an OEM product with different names slapped on it, and everybody's trying to figure out how to market and support these things. Now they know Gen 2 is going to be better. Honestly, Gen 1 was pretty good, but Gen 2 is going to be better.
So it would be kind of fair to say, let's say, for example, if someone's kind of on defense, they don't necessarily need it right now, that they should wait, let's say, 6 months or a year to kind of see what the new stuff that's coming out, possibly the prices are going to be dropping. And because I guess almost like it's not necessarily like with rifle scopes where it's already been done and you might have a little bit of new products or evolution, but like with this, because the market is just so ramping up, the prices there's going to be continued pricing pressures, and there's going to be continued pressure for innovation and growth, that unless you absolutely need it, you might as well just wait a bit more.
No, that's always a bad advice.
Okay.
Look, none of us here, well, most of us, vast majority of us here, are not getting shot at. You're not going out in the boonies protecting yourself against a horde of zombie pigs trying to, claw you to death, etc. We do this because we like doing this. We do this
Yeah,
for fun,
absolutely.
right? If you postpone your purchase by a year, you just skipped out on a year of having fun with this thing.
Okay.
If you're super pressed for cash and it's a one purchase you're going to make, thermal is probably not going to be it anyway.
Okay.
Using thermals there's a learning curve. The image looks odd. Figuring out the ins and outs of what you're looking at, thermal differentials, all those sort of shit. All of that also takes time. You want to play with the thermal, it's within your budget, buy it. Look for a good deal and buy one and go mess with it. And after you're done with that, for your next thermal, you'll know what you need, what works for you.
Okay. That sounds like good advice. I guess
It's
the
like
one
with
final
rifle
one.
scopes, right? There's always a better one around the corner, right? You can use like if you do that, you will wait for another 20 years because there's always a better one in a year.
But here's the thing, though. Even when we're looking at rifle scopes, let's say, for example, if you're just trying to buy a first focal plane reticle rifle scope, I mean, really, I don't think we've seen a ton of innovation, with the exception of some of the newer products that have 30, 40 mils of internal elevation adjustment. But the vast majority of the growth, I would say, is we're taking good features and we're putting them in prices that had not been affordable up until now. So I guess let me put it this way. Like your Strike Eagles, the Venoms, the Element Titans, like the quality and capability of those type of scopes previously were not available at those price
Correct.
points. And then looking at, for example, I would say an innovative product like the Tracked 4 to 25 with 46 or 47 mils of internal elevation adjustment at that price point is like pretty damn awesome. But unless you need 47 mils of internal elevation adjustment, like okay, whatever. So it's rather good quality scopes were available in the past. It's just they cost a lot more money than what you can get right now, primarily due to better QC and expertise at Philippines and Chinese OEMs.
Mm-hmm.
So
Better thermals have been available for a while, just a lot more money. What you're seeing now is not new innovative thermals. It's just more performance for less money.
Okay.
Now, yes, conventional rifle scope is a more mature industry, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the type of a thermal that we're seeing for civilian use, I was a part of the team that developed one of the first ones of this type for the military back then in 2004.
Okay.
They've been around for a little while now. Now there is some higher end stuff that's a little bit harder to do, and that's still going to be expensive. You're talking about the thermals in a $2,000 to $6,000 range. Most of them, these are comparatively mature products that are being made more mature by serious companies coming into this, not just this cottage entity. Like Bearing Optics. As much as I like those guys, I know the guy who owns the company is a nice guy. They make very nice stuff. It's a real company, but it's not Burris, it's not Vortex, right? It's not Loophole.
Exactly.
Okay. Some of them are going to go out of business. Some of them are going to be absorbed. I'm hoping that all these guys like Bearing, etc., will eventually just sell their line to somebody else.
So why haven't these bigger companies been in this space? I mean, if you're saying, let's say, for example, night vision has been around for 70 years now, why haven't these bigger companies been in that space in the past?
Because most of the people there can't even spell rifle scope, much less thermal. No, it's true.
But I mean, but didn't they develop those solutions for military and law enforcement, or it's not a big enough market for them to?
So solutions developed for military and law enforcement were a little bit different.
Okay.
And because they were originally developed for military and law enforcement, they were developed with different margins, different price structure, different everything. It's very hard to port that into a commercial world, which is much more competitive.
Okay. Interesting.
What prompted this commoditization of the thermal rifle scope, thermal handheld market, was the rise of 4 different Chinese OEMs, Chinese military invested billions and billions of dollars into several companies to do thermal imaging cores, primarily. They needed them for the seekers for their own missiles, and the stuff that wasn't good enough, they allowed them to sell in the open market.
Wow.
FLIR, a US Swedish company, those was the microbolometers, and Sofradir, a French company, decided for God knows what reason to go and teach the Chinese on how to do this. And they learned. They're not particularly innovative. They're using the same architecture, just in large quantities. But all of a sudden, we have a significant supply of imaging cores that are not hugely expensive. And that makes all the difference if you're trying to go into the commercial market.
So if you want to be a badass American and go night vision, go hunting with a thermal scope in the middle of Texas, you got to thank the Chinese.
Pretty much.
That's
no,
awesome.
so you can do Envision, which is US made. You can do Trigicon, which is, they haven't been innovating, but it's US made. There are a few others here and there. Almost everybody else's is Chinese cores. Pulsar is French cores. It's from Sofradir. Well, now it's called Linred. Used to be Ulyss, then Sofradir. Now it's Linred. ETN test. Supposedly, a while back they told me that the cores are also French, but they're clearly not as good, so they're having some quality issues or image processing issues, something.
Now, the one that popped up, and I've had a couple of people ask me about it, and one of the local FFLs was asking about, was the Armasight ones. So I know there's a little bit of a question whether it was US made or it wasn't US made. What's the deal with those? And have you played with any of those?
There's Armasight and there's new Armasight.
Okay.
The new Armasight, I know I have a reasonable idea of what they do, but it's protected by a broad range of agreements, so I can't talk about it. The old Armasight was FLIR cores, and then FLIR went and bought them. The guys behind Armasight, so a bunch of these Russian guys who started ATN, at some point they all decided they don't like each other. A couple of guys went off sideways, started Armasight. It's a bunch of Russians, right? So people who came here right around the same time I did. It's ATN, Armasight, Bearing Optics, Envision.
I knew Bearing Optics was okay.
Yeah. I've known a lot of them for quite a few years, and there's several others behind the scenes that you don't know about, right? You know who owns Optics Planet, right?
Yes.
Good. It's all part of the same group of people. But anyhow,
yeah, because
bunch
so
of
basically,
Russian Jews in America started doing thermal weapon sites, which is kind of interesting. But anyhow,
so Jews do control the world.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we can't get the roads fixed, but outside of that, absolutely.
Yep.
But so the first Armasight was FLIR cores. They sold, the FLIR bought the company, then it was sort of clusterfuck by FLIR, and they shut it down. So the new Armasight, best I can tell, is the same guys who were behind the original Armasight. They just kind of restarted the company, restarted the brand, but they are trying to do things a little bit different. So some of that work's done in the US, some of that probably not. I need to go and talk to them and kind of figure it out.
Interesting. Interesting. All right. So
I haven't seen the new Armasight stuff, so I don't have any strong opinions.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, so basically Armasight were one of the companies that was under the Third Bull marketing umbrella, which basically was then bought out by Optics Planet. So now we're all Optics Planet brand under that same umbrella. Razer Gen 3 6x36. So James is one of my original followers on the channel. He's been asking about that scope. So I know you've been very positive on the Razer Gen 3 6x36. Anything changed since that time, or do you see that any other new scopes that are going to provide it competitive pressures, or is it still going to be a very good value for what it is?
No, if you want a tier 1 scope for $3,000, it's pretty much the only option.
Okay. So how about
half a step behind it is Burris XTR Pro. Very, very good. It's a little less expensive, and it's not quite as nice optically as the Razer, but has several advantages. And generally, it's very nice. Just kind of have to figure out how much money you're willing to spend. On the look, tier 1 scopes are Schmidt and Bender, change in theta, zero compromise, colors. That's more or less it, and now Vortex Razor Gen 3.
So
Right.
what was like the Gen 3 versus like the Loophole Mark 5, which I think has been
Yeah,
one of the
that's not
standard.
even a fair fight.
Interesting. In
Not
what
even close.
perspective?
Optically,
Like in image
primarily.
quality. Okay.
Image quality, I mean, turrets I think are better, but turrets are neither beholder. Mark 5 is a perfectly reasonable scope, but if you think of let's think of it this way: tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4,
Mm-hmm.
right? So throw a brand at me. Let's see where that fits. Let's
Okay,
just go
so
through
we're
the list.
basically ZCO, obviously.
Tier 1.
Okay. Schmidt and Bender.
Tier 1.
Okay. Vortex, obviously, it's going to depend on the product line.
Yeah, so Razor Gen 3, tier 1.
Okay. So then, for example, like we have like the one, like the Leicas, the Swarovskis, and the Zeiss scopes.
So Swarovski does not make tactical scope. They don't have FFP precision.
Okay.
Zeiss, S5 is probably tier 1, but I'll take the Razor Gen 3 over that. Primarily because of the narrow field of view on the Zeiss. Narrow-ish.
Okay. All right.
The Zeiss S3 is tier 2.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Zeiss. Once we take this half a step down from Razor Gen 3, you have Zeiss S3, you have Element Theos, you have Vortex, Burris Xterra Pro, you have Night Force Attacker.
so this is basically your tier 2s now.
Like 1.5, 2. There's not a huge difference there, but
Okay.
it is. But they are a step below Razor Gen 3 in terms of overall performance. And the big part with Razor Gen 3 is usability. Of all of the scopes I have seen to date, if you are a high magnification guy, you need to get comfortable behind it in 36 power. It is the most comfortable of them all without sacrificing the field of view. That's very difficult to do. It has wider field of view than ZCO. That has wider field of view than the new 7-35 tangent. The 535 is wide.
Okay.
The only scope I can think of that's wider field of view than the Razor Gen 3 is a new mid 6-36. The European version, the US version, has a constricted field of view for a variety of patent issues. Okay, so that's basically where we are. The big thing to keep in mind, right? So Attacker 7-35 is comparatively close to Razor Gen 3, but it tunnels, and Razor Gen 3 is generally still a better scope.
Okay.
So Attacker 7-35 is very, very good, but it is more expensive than a Gen 3. And Gen 3 optically is a little bit better.
Okay. So then basically, so can you actually get quote unquote a tier 1 scope for under 3,000 or let's say under 2,500?
Every once in a while it goes on sale. People run around the internet all the time saying that they can buy a Razor Gen 3 for under $2,000, yet nobody ever does. So you see these people sniper side all the time. Most of the time it's people who are trying to say that they got a good deal. Though you can get them from a company called AA Optics in the 2,300 range. Consistently, those are the refurbished scopes. They enjoy the full Vortex warranty and all that. Outside of that, every once in a while you'll see them go on sale. Like Optics made a batch of black anodized Razor Gen 3s, and they were, I think, $2,600.
Okay.
And that's because they bought a huge quantity and they got their own anodizing and all that.
So basically,
Basically
if somebody has Loophole Mark 5 money, let's say call it 2,000, and you can save a little bit more, you basically get quite a bit step up going to the Razor Gen 3.
You do. No, it's also much heavier, right? So, and once again, I'm friendly with a bunch of Loophole guys, and they're gonna intensely dislike me saying this. The reason to go with Loophole Mark 5 is if you're looking for a lot of magnification at a lightweight.
Yep.
If weight is not important, Mark 5 is no longer a contender.
Okay. I will say, so I have the Mark 5, 5-25, and one of the things that I definitely like about it, I do like the turret system with the pop-up indicator, and the lightweight is actually pretty nice, and the image quality seems pretty much okay for
it's very
point.
respectable. Don't misunderstand. It's very respectable. It's not a bad scope, but It has its limitations. Leopold generally keeps the field of view comparatively narrow. One of the things that allows them to keep the scope comparatively lightweight.
Okay.
But for similar money, if you can get a Gen 3 for similar money and weight doesn't matter, it is a superior scope in every way possible.
Okay. So then let's say, for example, I'm thinking at that $15,000 to $2,000 price point. It seems like basically they're like clones of each other. So this would be the
related. They're not
Apex.
identical, they're related.
Well, correct. So related. Well, I guess some of them are more related than others. So, like for example, your Cronuses, your Tracts, your Mavens, your Apex was the Eotech, the Voodoo.
Apex unrelated.
I'm sorry, which one?
Apex. You brought up Apex. It's unrelated. Nothing in common.
Awesome. But basically, for like, let's say, for example, at that type of a scope, I mean, I'm assuming that this is going to be straight tier 2 scopes in your. All of them are going to be straight tier 2. So, like, what is someone giving up from your higher end? Let's say, for example, your tier 1s. What are you not getting, and is it going to be noticeable for the vast majority of people?
Oh gosh. So it always tries to. You always try to get it into conversation. Is it worth the extra money? And I can't answer it for you. For some people, it is. Some people, it's not. The feel is a little bit worse. Some of the things are not as polished. Image quality is visibly worse. Still quite good, right? The most bang for your buck you get is in the $1,500 to $2,000 range. You're looking for the most you're going to get for your money. That's basically where you get pretty decent quality Japanese rifle scope. It's going to hold zero. It's going to track true vast majority of the time. It's going to have perfectly respectable image quality. Where are you going to see the differences, right? Well, the air turned to shit, right?
I'm sorry, the what?
The air turned to shit.
Okay.
Atmospheric conditions not bad.
Yep.
And I've had this. I would have 6 rifle scopes, and on a tripod, and I'm looking at them. I'm going like, okay, with this one I can shoot this far. With this one I can shoot this far. With the tangent I can shoot as far as I want.
Yeah.
And it's $5,000, and they're doing some weird things with optics. But hey, I mean that's what you pay for. You are getting some extra boundary conditions, right? You are still going to be able to shoot and aim and see what you're doing in somewhat worse conditions. If you only go to the range during the day, it makes no difference for you.
Okay.
Just think about what you're going to do with this thing. Another one, for example, if you dial a lot, if you like to shoot far with rimfire, with a lot of the scopes in the $1,500 range, the moment you start dialing in a reasonable amount of adjustment, the image quality starts changing. Right,
as you're getting out to the edges.
As you're getting out of the sweet spot, right? So your resolution changes, contrast changes, start picking up distortion, and all sorts of other fun things. On the tangent or ZCO, you don't.
Okay.
I mean, there's still some degradation, but it's minimal. Right, the Razor Gen 3, for example, it's one of the things where it's a huge improvement over Razor Gen 2, going off center. Okay. So there are viable, measurable, and visible advantages. Whether they're important to you or not is an open question.
So I guess basically, if someone's going to run their stuff at the ragged edge of performance, and they're going to need it to basically be good in any type of conditions, in that case, yeah, you would absolutely see it. But I mean, if you're a fair weather shooter or you're somebody who's getting into this, odds are you're probably not even going to notice any difference in it, or it's not going to even necessarily make any practical difference to you.
So Americans really like to proudly say this thing, because everybody here is affluent. I'm a buy once, cry once kind of guy. Most of the time, it's a blindingly stupid thing to say. Because if you're new at this, you don't have a foggiest fucking idea what you want and what you need.
Exactly. Yep.
Because I can guarantee, so Mr. SlavGuns and I both have been shooting for quite a long time. Yep. Right? And there's a really, really good chance that the things that are really important to me are not necessarily really important to him, and vice versa. I don't know what those things are. We haven't talked about it. But I guarantee. But, I hang out with some guys who are a little bit better than I am, David Tav, people like that.
Yeah.
Just, a little bit. Sarcasm, in case people don't get it. David is freaking amazing. Right? And there are certain things that are important to him that I can't even comprehend. Until you go through this crucible trying to figure out what's important for you, you do not know what to spend the money on. if
Oh
you
yeah.
need to. Do not do the buy once, cry once upfront. Buy good enough. Buy a $1,500 scope. Don't spend $5,000. Buy a $1,500 tract and go.
Yeah.
And if you feel the need to upgrade, you will know what you need.
Yeah. And this is actually, I'm glad that you're bringing up this point as well. Like, kind of like basically kind of bring up to people. It's like, well, look, it's like until you know exactly how your piece of equipment is holding you back, then you shouldn't be considering getting something else, just unless you just have FU money and you just want to go buy it, but you might not be buying the right solution. And you might be a dialer or a holdover. So for example, I have a tendency to hold over quite a bit. So one of the things that's important to me is I like a reticle with at least 10 or 15 mils of internal elevate, with at least 10 or 15 mils worth of holdovers. And the reticle design makes a difference to me. I like it to look fairly clean, but still have the holdovers. For somebody who's a dialer, it's probably not going to make any bit of difference at all. I'm also the type of person, I generally shoot only in bright sunny conditions, and it's going to be white painted steel targets. So illumination is not that critical for me. And I know for you, you don't even look at a scope unless it has illumination on there.
I look, but with the like in lower price ranges, absolutely do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if a scope
So,
is expensive, especially it's front focal, I absolutely insist on illumination.
yeah.
Because I am, what's a good way of saying this? I am a lot more of a general purpose shooter than people think.
Yeah.
Right? I have a reputation of just being a precision guy, which I find remarkable given how much I talk about prismatics and things like that. But we still need to talk about this, you guys. It's pretty impressive.
Yes.
But other than shotgun, I do everything.
Yeah.
And I absolutely insist that any rifle scope I get, even for precision, works on all magnifications in all lighting conditions. If it doesn't, it gets dinged for it with an explanation.
Yep. And basically, so look, guys, if you're getting in and you don't know what you want, basically go get something cheap. Get like if you have a
Don't get
$500
cheap. Get
budget.
something that's still good quality.
By cheap, I mean, like, let's say, for example, get something like a Vortex Venom or a Helix or Element
Perfect,
Helix, and basically run those to the ragged edge, and then hit that point where you can honestly say, I
Like
wish
this.
I had something a little bit better because it's holding me back. And by that time, you're going to learn your preferences, whether you're a dialer or a holdover, or what type of weather conditions you're going to be shooting at, or what type of distances you're shooting at. Are you going to be a rimfire person that you don't need the absolute best image quality, but you need to have ample internal elevation adjustment? Or you might be the type of person who's like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm going to be shooting as far out as I can. And in that case, you need to have the best image quality possible and things like that. And at that point, you're going to be like, hey, you know what? Like, I think because of thing like, if you ask anybody who has the experience, they'll know precisely what their preferences are and what they need out of a scope. But the vast majority of the people don't. And it's like, okay, well, if you really want to, like, I have a friend who's like, I want to go buy a ZCO and I want to go buy a ZCO to put on his car. But up until I met with him and I took him out to the range, he had yet to shoot past 300 yards, but he knew he wanted a ZCO. Doesn't know why, but it's the best.
Look, I mean,
So,
it limits my audience significantly. I go to great pains to explain my reasoning much more so than what I actually recommend. Because the reasoning is what makes a difference. The reasoning is applicable to everyone. My specific choice is not necessary.
yeah. Very cool. All right, so you have that new little toy.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead. I know you're giddy to
Okay,
talk
general
about it. So
disclaimer. I am
what is
biased
it?
because I designed the reticles for these things.
Ooh,
Yeah,
congratulations.
and I'm very
That's
happy about
awesome.
this. Like I've been wanting to design a proper reticle for prismatic for a long time, and finally Element approached me, and I'm going like, yes. So it's a
Nice.
5-power prismatic with a 30mm objective.
Okay.
It is made in China. It's $600-ish. The mount is up front. There's an accessory rail that can move to different things to put in the red dot. Eyepiece is adjustable. There is illumination. There is sight focus down to 7 meters.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Optically, it's as far as this side of Alcan, this is probably the best image quality I've seen in the prismatic.
Wow.
And the reticles, I have a.
Do you have a diagram of
I-
them that we can pull up?
So on Element website, they have pictures of them. There too. There's Milleradian and there's BDC. Because I don't know if I can share. I know you can.
You can share. Let me see.
I can share. Okay, I'll
So
just pull up
this one,
Element Optics.
is this one already out or no?
So it's on their website. The one I have two with different reticles that are from the first production batch.
Immersive series?
Yeah. So 5x30, 5 power.
Okay.
In Europe, I know a couple of people have already been able to buy them. I think the first batch just got to the US, and I fully expect them to be available shortly, within 2-3 weeks.
Okay, so
Excuse me, side focus down to 6 yards. Okay, I found the Milleradian reticle and the BDC, and I can share them. I did a.
So actually, hit it on your, like on the bottom, you should be able to see share. Yeah. You should be able to share it.
Okay. I did a live stream already explaining the reticles. It's on my channel.
I will link those in the description.
And there we go. I think I found the right button. There we go. So this is the BDC reticle. This one has MOA clips.
We don't see it. Hold on. Let me. Oh, there we go. Now I see it.
You see it now?
I see it on my end. So let me actually.
Yeah, you need to edit the stream.
Okay.
There you go.
There we go.
So you'll be able to see this. And the basic idea, right? I was thinking about what we do with prismatics. This prismatic is not lightweight. You basically get this instead of a PVO if you don't need the flexibility, but you want wider field of view, about 30% wider than typical low power variable, and you want well optimized image quality. The 40 MOA horseshoe.
Can you actually zoom it? Can you click it? Yes. Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
Okay.
So this is MOA.
This is a MOA reticle. 40 MOA horseshoe drops for SS109, 3, 4, 5, 600 yards. I know everybody loves to have BDC to 8,000 yards. I was trying to keep the reticle sufficiently clean. So the only stuff that's illuminated is the stuff that's in red.
That's awesome.
And the idea was when it's dark to not cloud anything. It's not super bright illumination. It's designed to be good in low light. Because in normal daylight, you can see the reticle fairly well. The width of these bars are 5 mile per hour wind. The dots are 10 mile per hour wind. And the numbers are lead of 5 miles per hour.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah. So that's basically that. And on the other somewhat innovative thing that I think it's innovative, notice the primary aiming point here. It's thicker than other thin lines.
Yeah.
Because everybody's trying to go the thinnest primary aiming point. And it makes no sense to me because on a scope where you hold over with a reticle, when you're shooting further out, you will not be aiming with the primary. You'll be aiming somewhere down here. So at closer distances, having these things slightly thicker draws your eye to it.
Yeah. Okay.
It's designed for 200 yard zero.
200 yard zero. Okay.
Yeah. The little knob above it is 100 yards, and then it's 200, 250, 300, and so on. 350, yada yada. Okay.
Now, how does it translate to other calibers? Like, let's say, for example, like 6.5 Grundle or ARCs or any of those stuff.
It's going to be close enough. It depends on how you set it in. So the basic BDC reticles are always approximate. Conditions change, altitude changes, and all that. So
length of barrel,
it's not going to be perfect. The way to do this, figure out what is close to the furthest range you use. Let's say you want to match reasonably well at 400. Get a 400 aiming point and set it in with your Grendel to make sure it's dead on at 400. Then everywhere closer than that, it's going to be in the ballpark. Your linear error is going to be comparatively small. For people who shoot the other calibers, there is the Milleradian reticle, which is this. Okay, the horseshoe is the same size. Roughly 6 Milleradian is approximately 40 MOA, not exactly, but ballpark. There's a small Milleradian grid of 6 mils only. Again, I was trying to keep this thing ballpark same size without being too busy. Only all this stuff illuminated, half and full Milleradian steps. The end of the illuminated part is 5 mile per hour lead. This is 10 mile per hour lead.
Cool.
That's that.
So
If you want to
one
use oddball calibers, the milli-radian reticle is going to do what you need to do if you know how to use a ballistic calculator.
So scroll down to the bottom. Is that a range finding feature on them, or
So
not
on the
this one,
BDC, yes. I'll go back to BDC. On the BDC, yes. On the milli-radian one, I
Okay.
didn't put it in because if you are using milli-radian reticle, you should range with milli-radian reticle. That's what it's for.
Yep.
On a BDC reticle, they asked me to put in a choke style rangefinder. So human height above this thing, this is human head, this is human shoulders. Out to 600 yards again, and the BDC goes to 600 yards.
Okay. So here's a question. So like the numbers are like whacked. So it's like 28, 40, 52. Like why are the increments of 12 as opposed to, let's say, doing increments of 10 or like just like more normal numbers?
So because for MOA, increments of 10 end up being a little bit weird. Each step from one hash mark to another is 4 MOA.
Okay.
Okay. And the reason it is on the milli-radian reticle, each step is 3 points is 1 milli-radian, which is 3.6 MOA, roughly. Well, 3.4, whatever. Okay.
And this is your tell me you're a mill shooter without saying you're a mill shooter.
Not necessarily. How do you, when you're holding with your MA, what do you use as a base unit?
When I do MOA, I don't shoot MOA.
Correct. So, but what do you use? Well, I do grudgingly, but what do you use as your base unit when you're trying to figure out how to hold for wind? It's a 5-power scope. I cannot do hash marks every 1 MOA. They will blend in.
Yeah,
I can kind of do 2, but they become very busy. 3 is very unnatural to people because we divide everything by 2. So the next step up is 4. So my base unit has to be 4. If my base unit is 4 MOA, I cannot start doing 5, 10, etc.
Got it. Okay.
So each step is 4, and that's why you end up with the larger numbers being at 12.
Okay.
But the idea with this, to a significant degree, is that it's a BDC reticle. You will basically mostly be using this, and the outer numbers if you decide you want to range something fairly large once in a blue moon.
Okay. Very cool.
And unfortunately, the only place where I got round numbers was at 40. So we'll see how it does in the market, but the BDC part is what I expect to be used the most.
Probably. Now, so they also, looking at their website, they have the 5X, they had the bigger ones as well. Did you have any involvement with the 10?
I did not have any involvement with those, and those are very different. So the Immersive, they joined with a company that did immersive scopes and made some modifications, and I had some input, some things they do. But the high power ones are the ones with essentially no eye relief. They're primarily for air guns. They are very nice, but they have an eye relief. It's about 1 inch, I think. So nothing with recoil.
You wouldn't want to use them on anything with recoil. Yeah, you wouldn't want to use them with anything with recoil.
So that's a compact, high image quality scope primarily for air guns. I've tried this kind of stuff, even on a rimfire, and it bumps you in the eye. It doesn't hurt, it's just annoying. The only one that I was, the 5 power has a 3.3, 3.4 inch eye relief.
That's not bad at all. That's pretty
not
nice
bad at all. I'm gonna once again. I'm sorry I barged into your stream. Partly to talk about this thing because it's really cool. I'm gonna show you a better picture. If you don't mind, am I still sharing?
You're good. You're good.
Yeah. So here's the interesting thing about this. The reason a lot of people approach me to help them with reticles and other things, and more than half the time I say no. Because the product has to be good enough, otherwise I'm not tying my name to anything.
Exactly.
With this thing, there were 2 reasons I wanted to do. Well, partly I'm friendly with Element guys, and they're genuinely good people. Which is, there are a lot of good people in this industry, but not all of them are. Element guys are good people. One is that I wanted a nice prismatic, and optically this thing is superb. It's some different small OEM in China. The guy who owns it is an optical designer. I don't know what Voodoo has. The eyepiece on this thing is absolutely world class. I mean, it's not common.
Awesome.
Super well corrected, very good image quality. I was very impressed. Another reason I wanted this thing, notice that the base is not integrated. Almost all prismatics would have some sort of an integrated base. In the front of the turrets, is a 34mm tube.
Wow.
The very first prototype I had, I took off this mount, put in two 34mm rings up front, and put it in a bolt gun. Everybody's lamenting that there aren't enough fixed power, high quality fixed power scopes out there. They're all getting discontinued and all that. Well, with this mount, it's an AR scope. Take the mount out, put a couple of low rings, lowish, medium rings, whatever, and all of a sudden, here's your super compact fixed power scope. Without the mount,
Awesome.
I mean, it's not lightweight, right? Without the mount, I think it's like 18 ounces. And with the mount, like 24. So same ballpark weight as a low power variable would be with or without a mount. But the image you get in the field of view, it's a 30%, 1/3 larger field of view than typical low power variables.
That's
You want a
fantastic.
compact short scope on a compact bolt gun? This is it. This will even work with with quite a few thermal clip-ons. I'm about to take it pig hunting. I'll put it in a rifle, put a clip-on in front of it. So the field of view is wide enough for it to actually work. Okay.
Wow, that is awesome. That's actually really exciting. And I know for a lot of people, let's say for example, like if you're doing a red dot with a magnifier, I mean, it's going to add a whole bunch more weight. And if you have any type of eyesight problems, this is definitely going to be a good way to go.
It's different.
Go ahead.
It's not permanently fixed.
Well, yeah,
they're removable.
Okay.
They can be. There is a tightening ring, so you can tighten them to be in a particular location. They have magnetic closures and all that. These are nice lens caps, but they're removable.
Correct. Cool.
Very nice. It's innovative. It's different. It's innovative. But I was really impressed with the kind of image quality that we're getting. Now, the usual disclaimers. I've seen a couple of prototypes and now 2 full production ones. We'll see how well they hold up. You know, the proof is in the pudding. Once some significant number of this gets out there, I want to see how well they hold up and all that. But at first blush, I'm pretty happy.
That's fantastic. And I'm assuming they're still going to do their lifetime warranty on it and all of that stuff.
Yeah, all the usual stuff.
Okay. So the MOA is going to be the BDC reticle, and then the mill is going to be the I'm sorry, the mill is going to be the mill. It's not going to be a BDC.
It's a
so here's a question. So with both of them, is basically the intent to use holdovers within a scope, or is the intention that you're still going to be dialing in?
I would imagine you're going to use holdovers with this. I mean, dialing with a 5-power prismatic, I mean, it's possible. The turrets actually track. I tested them.
Okay.
But, there's no zero stop. Once you remove the cap, they're nice finger adjustable turrets. They're surprisingly decent. But the idea is that you're going to be using the reticle.
Okay. Very cool. And that's
the BDC version sits on an AR for me. I'm going to go beat it up. And the Milradian version is about to go on a 458 SOCOM. So we'll see how that goes. If that doesn't kill it, we can say it's reasonably robust.
Okay. So there's another question. Can the lens caps be indexed to open at 4, 3, 3, 12 o'clock, 11,
Yes,
10,
anywhere
9,
you want. You can rotate them and fix them in place.
Okay. Or you can just remove them, assuming if you don't want to have them on there.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment.
That looks... Okay. There you go. Drew, hopefully that answers that question.
So you can put it on in any direction you want. And this one is, there is a lock ring here that tightens it, and I can also rotate it any which way you want.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be interesting if someone does magnetic scope caps.
Mm-hmm.
So
Leupold, the luminous are magnetic, and the rear one here is also magnetic.
Okay. Very cool. Okay. Yes, I mean, if it's going to hit that price point, I mean, it's definitely going to be a good replacement for a fixed power rifle scope.
It's not cheap. It's somewhat expensive for Chinese prisms. So it's about $600. But I look at this a little bit differently. I've talked about this in the past, and I'm kind of My thoughts change occasionally, but what I'm converging on is that there are not a lot of low power variables under $1,000 that I truly like, partly because you start seeing compromises. Most low power variables I like tend to be on the more expensive side, starting with like size 6 for about $1,200-1,300 and on upwards. And in lower price ranges, I lean toward high quality prismatics with offset or piggyback red dots.
Mhm.
Even large prism ones that don't really save you any weight compared to a low power variable. But I am getting better image quality, I'm getting wider field of view, and I'm getting this weight in a shorter scope that's closer to me, so it affects handling a little bit less.
Cool.
I seem to be leaning that way for now that I've looked at Jesus. How many prismatics have I looked? How many are on the market?
But then, so basically, the other thing of it is someone's going to say, okay, so if on an LPVO, you're going to be able to get down to a 1x magnification or no magnification versus you're not going to be able to do with the prismatic.
Correct.
And I guess, well, I guess if you can say that, well, you can get an elk inspector, which you can go 1 to 4 or whatever. But in that case, okay, if you're just gonna keep it on 5 power, then what about at that same $600 price point, then just getting a 5 to 25 lightweight hunting scope or something along those lines?
Well, several reasons. One, lightweight 5 to 25 hunting scope and a for $600 doesn't exist.
Okay.
And the ones that exist suck. And none of them are going to get close to the performance you're going to get out of this on 5 power.
Cool.
And they're going to be much bigger. They're going to be much longer, even if they are not super heavy. It's with prismatics. Do I have any others here? No, the rest are in the safe. I'm going to do the whole thing on a 5 power prismatics. I have at least 4 of them here. There's 2 different families: large prism like this one, like Swamp Fox Saber, and small prism like Primary Arms 5 power, Vortex Speedfire Gen 2, Burris RT5. And I keep on looking at small versus large prism ones. Once you get to 5 power, they are really aimed at different type of a shooter. You're looking for tiny little 5 power prismatic like the Primary Arms, which I like quite a lot, by the way. You're the guy coming up from red dots just trying to add a little magnification. If you are looking at a large prismatic, you're the guy who's trying to decide, do I get a low power variable for $600 or one of these? And I'm making a case that for my use, I'd probably get one of these, add a red dot to it, and use it as a basically 1x, 5x design. Because the quality I'm getting on 5 power out of this, you cannot get out of a LPVO anywhere near the price range.
And that's basically, I was just, so the entire night you've been basically beating me to the punch. I know we've had conversation about this in the past, and I was asking you, well, how come these companies, they can do so many LPVOs at $300, $400, $500, and are they actually any decent versus, let's say, for example, getting like a 1.1 or let's say 1.5 LPVO instead of 1. And you're basically bringing up the point that it's actually significantly more difficult to do a true 1x than it is, let's say, something like a 5x along those lines. So I'm guessing by eliminating having to mess with a true 1 power or low magnification, and you're designing the product around a 5x, you can get more bang for the buck with that mission statement.
You can get a lot more optical performance for your money with a fixed power prismatic. And there are other advantages, the biggest one being its compact size.
Okay. Very true.
Size matters not only for your girlfriend, size matters for optics too. For example, with this one, I can put this on the AR-15 receiver and add the thermal clip-on without ever touching the handguard.
Okay.
Or if you're shooting offhand, this thing is here. LPVO would be here because it's longer, right? So your weight is further out. And once again, the product line is called immersive because of the immersive field of view. It is a huge difference where with a lot of the lower end LPVOs, it's almost like you're looking through the straw, the projected field of view is comparatively narrow. this thing is going to be 30-40% wider. Just like looking through a window.
Now, are there any images or graphics that they put on the website showing comparative field of view between this and an LPVO at a
I haven't
5x?
seen any. I'm going to do it through the scope video,
You should.
obviously, and show you.
Perfect.
So because what happens with the small prismatics, like a primary arms 5 power and all that, they have roughly the same field of view as low power variable scopes.
Okay.
And the large prismatics like this guy and Swamp Fox Saber take it up a notch.
Awesome.
As in a 30% notch.
Fantastic. So
But
I'm
that's
not
the
going to
trade-off.
ask. I'm not going to ask if this is a solution to a problem, but I am going to ask: Is this? Do you feel is still going to be a niche solution, or do you think it can have and solve and be as big of a seller as, let's say, a 5 to 25 first focal plane reticle rifle scope or something along those lines?
It's a very tough one. So see, like I'm not the one marketing this thing, right? I'm just very happy with it because I was involved with the reticle and I like what I got. So really don't know. I will say this, and you have to keep in mind that, like I said, I'm not an unbiased party because I made this thing for me, right? If I was starting from scratch,
that's the perk of being a gun tuber and being involved in the industry. You can sometimes have solutions that are made to fit your problem.
correct,
And
right?
now, along the same lines, Ruger swears that they named the Max 9 after me, but I don't know if I buy that one in particular. But there are some solutions and some products out there that I can say where we had feedback in, we had input into making the product what it is and the way it is. And in the near future, I mean, there will be a firearm that pretty much I picked out everything that I wanted on there, and they just did that. So it's pretty cool. It is a cool feeling. It's nice to be able to do that. But I mean, we're talking to somebody who has designed reticles for a lot of these high-end scopes. So it's awesome.
anyhow,
So sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. That was a very good point. I'm very fortunate to be able to do this. But also, once again, there is a method to my madness, but your madness may be different. So
Yeah.
I'll be talking through this thing more than once and see if that works for you. If I were starting out now and I wanted to build myself a general purpose AR, and I didn't want to spend the $2.5 grand on the Razer Gen 3 1 to 10 or $1,500 on the PAPLXC 1 to 8. I would do this, put a red dot on it. On this one, I'm going to put a red dot from Gideon Optics, new company. I want to look at them.
Okay.
And these for $600 together with the mount and $250 for a red dot, so $850, and I can do everything with this that the general purpose 56 AR should be able to do.
Cool. So even with 5 power on an AR, I mean, you should still be, if you're just shooting steel plates and such, I mean, you should definitely be able to get out to at least 600 to 800 yards with relative ease.
You'd be, so image quality matters. This 5 power is going to take you further than 8 power on all the budget 1 to 8 LPVOs.
Okay.
I have a 4 power Alcan Spectral S, just a fixed power, right? And I've taken it to 1,000 yards comfortably, and I can see everything. Okay. This is not as good as Alcan, but as close as you're going to get to an Alcan with a Chinese-made low power variable. I will take this over 5 power. Trigicon makes a 5x50, 5.5x50 prismatic. This is better.
Nice.
Yeah. I think it's better than the Steiner 5-36 that I've seen.
Very cool.
And because you have sight focus, you can really zoom in on shit. Not so much zoom in. Like you can optimize the focus at the distance you want.
So I have, and I should reach out to the people there, but I have my Gucci 6mm arc carbon fiber barrel, proof carbon fiber barrel. I think that would be a really good optic for it because it's still light enough that we can do smaller stuff, but it's still going to be capable of going out to 1,000 yards.
Reasonably so, right? So if you're trying to shoot a 6-inch target at 1,000 yards, it's going to be a little tough. If you're trying to shoot a 12, 18-inch target, you'll be fine.
Yeah, let's say like
Look,
an
I've
IPSC size
taken
target.
this to 870, I mean, without any
Yeah.
relations. And I can see where the
Nice.
targets are and all that.
Very cool. Very cool. It's definitely an exciting product, and congratulations. I know it's something that
Thank
you've been messing with, and I'm sure you have a lot of. I know you have a lot of pride, and because you deeply care anything that you do slap your name on or anything you're involved with. Because I know that you're also involved with a lot of projects that you've had your input, but your name isn't on there, or you aren't associated with it. But this is something that you are going to be. So I
I've been
know
involved in some projects where I don't want my name associated with it. Not every bet's 100%, okay?
Very true.
Look, I've had
Very
a chance
true.
to design precision reticles, low power reticles, hunting reticles for all sorts of different people. And I've had input in a variety of other aspects of what they do with rifle scopes. It's the first time I got to do a prismatic reticle the way I wanted, because
Interesting.
I think everybody else is doing it wrong, basically. Doesn't mean that I'm correct on this, but if I thought they were doing it right, I wouldn't want to design my own. I think they're doing it
Nice.
wrong. I think this is a better way. Am I right? Not necessarily. But I am going to be hopefully right for a significant subset of the shooting community.
Yeah. Very cool. So it's going to be interesting to see the way that Element markets this, because I know, look, even one same thing with Element. So when Element came out and they made their big splash into the optics market, they had their Nexus scope, which was the first big one, like that people started taking them seriously. Then they came out with the Helix and the Titan, and you pretty much had option A, option B, option C, one for every price point. And you pretty much knew exactly what it was. But over the last 2 years in particular, now they have so many different products that are out there that it is going to be interesting to see what is their what's their marketing priorities going to be, what is going to be their bread and butter. And if this is basically a product that they're heavily going to get behind and making sure that it succeeds, or is it possibly for them, hey, let's throw this out there, see if it sticks, but we know what our true bread and butter is and whatnot. So it'll be interesting.
It will be. Look, the guys behind Element, they're precision guys at heart, so that's the part they know better. The reason they asked me to help with this is that they wanted something for the AR-15 and related markets, where they have some experience, but they're precision guys at heart, right? So that's how they asked for my help.
Now, is there anything related with that to the Hyper 7 or no?
No, this is a different design, Hyper 7.
Okay.
So it
Hyper
came
7
from the brain of the same basic guy that they merged with. Immersive.
Okay.
There used to be a company called Immersive Optics in UK, and they merged with Element.
Okay.
And Hyper 7 and this prismatic, different version of it, and a high power prismatics, they were part of the immersive line. So now Element has this Element immersive product line, and that's for now several different very, very clever prismatics. These are not Me Too prismatics. They are different and they're clever.
Cool. Very cool. And it's actually, I think it's a nice selling point that the mount is going to be removable, and you can slap on a 30 millimeter ring and mount
34.
it in a bolt gun. 34, sorry, correct, 34. And you can put it, let's say, for example, in a hog gun or something like that. It's going to be a really good fix, really good.
Look, I put one on a 22 for a bit. That was awesome, actually. Weirdly, it was awesome because of the sight focus. You can do short distance. I have a little takedown 1022 with a suppressor. It was awesome. My kids loved it. Very, very easy to acquire sight picture. The reticle works really well at closer distances, open enough. You can shoot small things. Then I try to shoot with it further out. With the 22, okay, that gets tricky. Then you dial, it's not a scope for that.
Awesome. So, and you've already done a video on this one, so on your channel,
I did
correct?
a live stream on that, I think a week or two ago.
Okay, so if you're watching this in replay, I will include it in the comments, so definitely go check that one out. Honestly, I didn't even know that this product existed. It's definitely nice to see it on here. I was aware of the Hyper, but I wasn't aware of the Immersive, and definitely will be taking a look at that 5X. It looks fantastic. And so actually on our website, we're not
a
going
little
to
bit
put it up.
different. Will you be offended if I put a link to the live stream in the comments?
No, please do. Yeah, it'll save me the
I
trouble.
just found it.
I was just going to say, don't put up the picture on the Element website where we have it mounted to the queue, because it's somebody holding a gun and we are on a live stream.
Yeah, no. It's just a link to my YouTube live stream.
Please do. And Pun, so his channel is Dark Lord of Optics.
I am not hard to find. Interesting. I hit the link in there, I hit enter, now it's thinking. Okay, hopefully it's gonna work. We'll figure. Okay. But so final disclaimer,
Actually,
I do not work.
If you want to post that, hold on, they pop up or now. If you want to post the link in our private, and then I'll post it in the live.
Okay, there you go. Let's do that. Because I tried to put it into the public chat and it didn't want to do it. There you go. It's in a private.
And actually, I think I'm going to use the new feature that says related. So afterwards, it'll go there. All right, so I'll be able to do this, and then I will post it in the comments.
I appreciate that. So I do not work for Element. If the scope doesn't work, I will happily rip them a new one. They know it. Everybody who works with me, I make them sign a basic disclaimer that says consulting is great. Once I'm doing a review, this is called journalism. Even if you don't like it, you can take a long walk and a short beer.
Now, here's a question: would you shit on your own product?
Oh, absolutely. You want an example? Mi Optica 6 1:6 by 24.
Okay.
The reticle, I did a reticle for it, turned out an absolute turd. The reticle for the 5-30 Optica 6 turned out to be quite good, and for the 3-18, but for the 1-6, an absolute turd.
So you designed the reticle turned out to be turd, or the scope itself turned out to be bad?
A combination. So when I was designing a reticle, they told me it was going to have a day bright illumination, but then it didn't.
Okay.
And nobody mentioned it. I designed the reticle with a different thing in mind. I learned from that lesson, and I absolutely require that I see a prototype before anything goes to production. We ought to just throw it into production.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. It's a product that I was involved with, and it's a turd.
Okay. Now, you're also involved with March, I believe, correct?
Yes, a couple of reticles for March 5-42 and 4.5-28 scopes.
So there's the March, and then there was which other ones? So yeah, it was you didn't do anything with the IOR about.
No, that's a long conversation.
I know IOR and Night Force are like, if you see this man at SHOT Show, ask him about IOR and what he feels about Night Force.
That's okay. Collis and Swarovski are probably even higher on my shit list now.
Collis now? Wait, Collis and which one?
Yeah.
Who else?
Collis and Swarovski, it's the same company.
Oh, Swarovski. Okay.
But look, here's the thing, right? So Night Force makes good products, and I generally like most. I don't like all of them. I like most of them. IOR is generally turd, unless every once in a while they make a nice one, mostly by accident. Collis has problems optically. Swarovski generally makes very nice scopes. With Collis and Swarovski, my basic problem is business practices. There is a patent that they got granted, which is complete nonsense. But then they go and threaten some other companies. There's some nice stuff we can't get in the US because of that idiotic patent. I went and read the patent. I mean, they must have been giving nonstop blowjobs for a year to that patent examiner.
But here's the question, though. So, I mean, you bring up Collis and you bring up a company like that. But I mean, generally speaking, and like, unless you're very affluent or you're with shooting PRS or NRL, I don't think I've yet seen any person walk into a gun store and ask for a Collis scope.
So Collis is a company that originally invented rifle scopes. The very first rifle scope was ever made was Collis.
Yes.
Swarovski bought them. Swarovski bought them, I think, in the 70s or 80s, and didn't do anything good for Collis. So they're very capable. The current generation of rifle scopes are mechanically absolutely tier 1. Optically, they're more of a tier 2. So it's optically they're more of a competitor to Mark V, maybe a touch better, but not by much. But the basic problem is that if you go and look at a few scopes side by side in that price range, $3,500, $4,000, it's very hard to choose a cutlass. So sponsor shooters use them. A few people who to get taken in by a name use them. They have, but mechanically they're excellent. My basic problem is that after I figured out this patent business, once again, they're not doing anything illegal. I just don't like those business practices. I took all Callus and Swarovski, excuse me, Swarovski products, removed them from my list of recommendations. I have a list of recommendations I maintain. And unless specifically asked, I will not discuss Callus or Swarovski.
Very cool. Very, very nice.
Once
Awesome.
again,
So
they're
we've
not doing
covered.
anything illegal. It's entirely up to them. Leica sued them in Europe and won. Overturned the same patent in the US. Nobody has sued them yet. But all this lawfare is not my thing.
So practically, what type of features are we keeping away from U.S. markets?
They somehow managed to convince some retard to essentially patent a combination of field of view and magnification ratio. So if you have magnification ratio above 5, you can't have an apparent field of view above a certain number. How you can patent specification is
So
beyond
they patent a result.
essentially. You can't patent specifications. Now they added some little bit about optics, a particular lens it's used, it's in common use, etc. It's complete nonsense. The patent examiner was an idiot.
So
Once again,
they
in
didn't
Germany, Leica sued them and won.
Okay.
In EU, they don't. That patent has been invalidated.
So a European manufacturer can basically do that, but
In
the
Europe
US,
only. So
okay,
Schmidt and
in Europe
Bender,
only.
a new 6-36 scope, which is excellent. Very nice high-end scope. The apparent field of view around the world is 25 degrees. In US, 21.7 degrees. And it actually makes a noticeable perceptual difference. Still a very, very nice scope, don't misunderstand me.
Awesome.
But we can't have the Euro version because of this idiotic patent. It is just a bad patent. There is no real innovation there.
There you go. Awesome. So on that fun note, there's some questions. There's some new reviewers here. Where can people follow your channel? Where can they find you?
Look for Dark Lord of Optics, and I'll pop up like a bad dream.
We should do a documentary short film of like you popping up and like talking, like a little child looking under her bed, and there's DLO messing with a scope.
Yeah, let's not do a video where a little child looks under the bed and there's Dark Lord of Optics with a shotgun. I like that might get me arrested.
No, we wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But I can definitely see you completely holding a Night Force scope or holding a IOR and be like, "I'm sorry, I talked bad about you. I love you."
Sure.
Or is that on your OnlyFans?
I have a local sweat page. It's kind of like OnlyFans, almost. Except I promise to be fully clothed at all times. And I get paid to keep my clothing on. So
There you go. Awesome. So we're definitely going to come back and we are going to do a tier list. And we're going to do a lightning round tier list with the Dark Lord of Optics and answering more of your questions. I definitely love having these conversations. We'll also have a conversation about the stuff that's happening in the Middle East and all of those.
I'm going to have a full live stream on that on Wednesday.
Okay, so make sure you subscribe to his channel. I generally try to keep politics away from this channel, but I'll definitely pop on, or I can always contribute to that conversation. And what we're going to do is, I know this is part of the live stream, but because this element is pretty damn cool, I'm going to chop up this live stream in the near future. So we'll have a video just on the Element Immersive 5X in there. And hopefully looking forward to actually getting my hands on one of these in the near future as well. And that's basically that. So we've come 2.5 hours, a little bit shorter than 3, but it is getting a little bit late on the East Coast here. And Ilya, thank you very much for joining again. I am
Thank you for having me.
Really glad that you're able to pop on. Love seeing you smile and talk really passionately about things you like and dislike. And we'll have more of these conversation in the future. So everyone, thank you very much for coming on asking questions, commenting, and all of that. And we'll see you in our next live stream next Sunday, same time, same place.